Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the True Crime Cafe. I, of course, am Mr. Dago, and welcome everyone to Copy and a Cold Case. Today, guys, we're looking into the mysteriously strange disappearance of Mr. Jason Jolkowski, and if possible, we're going to roll into the even worse and it's just such a weird situation again of Robert Carl Disch out of Antarctica. So I appreciate you guys being here for that. Please hit the like button, share this out if you will, and let everybody know what we're doing on in here. And let's get this stuff going, guys. These are both really crazy, interesting cases. So here we go. Here we go. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the cafe. Great to be here with you guys again. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you're all having a great morning, had a great night, and I appreciate you jumping in here and starting this off with me. I got two really interesting cold cases to look at today. I'm hoping we can get through the second one. The first one is Jason Jolkowski. It completely strange, really, really strange. This kid went missing without a trace, like completely vanished and made it thin air and nothing. Okay. And then, of course, after that, if we can get through it, Robert Carl Disch, who worked as a scientist in, I can't remember exactly what it is, but it was in Antarctica, which is, there's nothing there, okay, except for what they worked at. And he stepped out of his facility to go do something, came back and disappeared, vanished into thin air again. And there's nobody out there, there's nothing out there. So, explain that one. That one is something for the X Files, as far as I'm concerned. But I'm just saying, I don't know, guys. So that's what we're doing today, and I appreciate you guys joining us for it. Mama Bear won't be here today. She's got some things going on, so you're stuck with me and my ugly mug. Sorry, sorry, sorry. Come on in, guys. Grab a seat. Get comfortable, if you will, please and thank you. I promise you won't be disappointed with these ones. These ones are really, really strange. And I the first one, Jason's Kate, I don't understand. Like, it's just, it doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. None. It's very, very weird. Come on in, everybody. Grab a seat. Get comfortable, if you will. If you could. Where did that go? Did it just disappear? That's wild. Oh, no, wait. There it is. Aha. It's still here. Okay. Who do we got in here with us so far? Looks like starting with Riley's in the house. Lisa Joe, welcome back. Sassy Cassie's in the house. Good to see you, Cass. Miss Brandy B, the OG. Welcome back to you, Brandy. Stormy, good to see you, dear. Thank you for joining us. Miss Canna, Crystal, good to have you here, Crystal. Thank you for joining us today. Mikey, the last 24. Good to see you, brother. Thank you for being here with us today. I appreciate you. Steven with SNW Collectibles and Music Live Streaming. Good to see you, brother. Miranda Lee, welcome back to you. Come on in, guys. Hit that like button if you will, please, and share this out if you could. Please and thank you. And give me just a moment here, guys. I got to grab my coffee. It wasn't done brewing when I started this, so I shall be right with you. Just one moment. All right, all right, all right. All right, everybody. Thank you again for jumping in here with us. Let's see. Looks like Miss Wisdom speaks in the house. Look at this. There is nothing cranky about you, ma'am. She says, "Well, hello." It's the cranky old lady. 26 months, Doodlebug, or I'm sorry, Doodlebug. Wisdom Speaks has been here for wow. That's a long time. Mama Bear and you were running in the neck and neck now. Thank you so much, too, by the way, Wisdom, for being here, for sticking with this channel, for standing by me, for being part of the team, just for being who you are. You know, I love you. I appreciate everything you do and yourself. You're just an amazing person, and there's not much I can say. So I really appreciate you. So thank you so much for being here for all this time. And I hope that you'll be here for a long time after. Congratulations and happy day anniversary, dear. Yep. Mm. Welcome, Captain Jacks. Good to see you. 19 peeps in the house, 10 likes. You guys are awesome. Keep hitting that like button, guys, if you will. The Tomboys in the house. Welcome. Again, guys, we're looking into the cold case of Jason Jolkowski. And hopefully we can get through the second one, too, which is Robert Carl Disch. He was a scientist that worked out of I can't remember what it was called, type of facility in Antarctica. It's pretty wild the way they both are strange, as you'll see. And I think we're going to be getting into the next. I want to ask you guys too. Are you guys familiar with the Black Dahlia story? SRBBBBBBBBB. Welcome, dear. Tomboy says it says 17 months. That's way longer than that. Way long. You're probably right there neck and neck with Miss Sherry, Tomboy. In my opinion, I believe you would be. The Black Dog. I would. Some of you, I figure, have heard about the Black Dog. It's a really interesting cold case. Very sad story. But yeah, we may be looking into that one too. It's been unsolved for how many years? There's theories on it, but still unsolved. So we might be getting into that one because I've read stories and books and watched movies and all that, and it's still unsolved, and I'm really interested in it. So let's see if you guys would be interested in covering the Black Dahlia. Throw me a one in the chat. If not, make it a two. Oh, it's RB. You're gonna be nice to me as long as you're nice to her, Cassie. See, that's why, Cass. Right? You do things like that. You put a three in there, smart ass. Such a smart ass you are, Miss Cass. It's okay. For those of you that didn't know this, these two are mother and daughter, Cassie and SRB, and they go back and forth, back and forth. And I'm always trying to get her to be nice to her mom, but she just doesn't do it. She doesn't do it. She's a brat. She's a little brat. She knows it. She's spoiled brat too. It's all right though, because we love her. Everybody says one. Stormy said six. I don't know what the hell six is, Stormy, but we can look into it. Yeah, right. See, it's about time you listen. Yes, you are, brat. Tell my girly girl I said hi, little Miss Liberty. Sweetest baby on the planet, I swear. I love it. Makes my day every time I hear it. And Brady says 52. Okay, all of you smartasses, keep going. By the way, I did talk to Paula. She's okay. She's been dealing with a lot of personal stuff and things like that. She said that she would be back around eventually. And she thanked me for checking on her and thanked everybody that was worried. So she's okay. I was a little worried about her for a while, but she did get back to me. So she got a lot of personal things going on, she said, and stuff like that that she's trying to get through. And she said she'll be back around eventually. Hello, Matthew. Liberty just yelled, "Hi, Dado." I love it. I love it. That makes my whole day. Swear to God, you guys. She's so sweet. I knew you would say something of anybody. Yes, Cal said she'd be back around too at some point. Again, dealing with personal things, and I get it. Real life always comes first, guys, and it's very important that it is dealt with so that you can do these things. So I get it. Must be losing your edge. Since when am I? Oh, you're fine. She always wants to grab my phone when you're live and goes, I talked to Dado. I love it. She's so cute. My God. I love it. Yeah, that's what she's been doing. That's what she told me. Family stuff and personal stuff. So she said she'd be back around here one of these days. Oh, you're fine, Brandy. Yes, the freaking Brat Pack. Exactly, Mikey. Thank you. We're missing one other one right now, too. She's probably still sleeping. Molly Cat. Oh, look at that. Telling Mikey to pipe down. See? Yeah, I do too, SRB. I really do. Kelly was a great addition, and she's her interaction was it was great. Doodle has a doctor's appointment, and might be here after the fact. Molly is probably sleeping. Mama Bear is dealing with first day of school for the kids and stuff like that, so she can't be here. Said she might be in chat. What the hell? I got fired. Oh, Matthew fired you again. You damn Lumook. I can assure every one of you I'm not a brat. I think we should ask Miss Tandy about that and see what her thoughts are about that. Come on in, everybody. 20 peeps in the house here. Let's see what we got going on. Hold on here. I'm sorry. I do want to throw, as I do every morning, a few of these out. Just give me a second, everyone. Please and thank you. There's still no new word on the. Oh, hold on. The missing 2-year-old with the mother and the RSO. Nothing there. Nothing new on Sophia Franklin, unfortunately. I need to get some more missing posters. That's something I definitely need to do. Let's see here, guys. Yeah, I ran through them all yesterday. The rest of what I had, so I need to get some more. Get them out there. Let's see. Okay. I'm glad you're feeling better, Miss Sherry. I don't see anything new on Dane Paulson yet. This is really starting to bug me in a bad way. Hold on. This is the newest thing. This is labeled at an hour ago, but I don't know that it's anything new, you guys. I would doubt it, but we're going to look at it real fast. Since I don't have any missing posters, I'm going to show this first, and then we'll get moving. Yep, I do remember that. They said that his last known location was, from what they have come to figure out, that he was by the river's edge, which took me back to the damn river. Yep, that's what they said. So, and that's kind of what my thoughts are too. I'm going to play this and see if that gives any of that info, guys, for if there's something new in there. I don't know.
Oregon, where the search turning now to the state of Oregon, where the search continues for a missing 2-year-old boy. Dane Paulson was last seen Saturday in the front yard of his family's home. Crews are now searching the surrounding area and nearby river in hopes of finding him safe and alive. Deputies say he is friendly and fearless. He loves water, but he can't swim. And they say at this time there's no evidence to suggest criminal actions are involved. Dozens of search and rescue members have been joined by volunteers looking for this little boy. The search effort has already covered nearly 400 acres.
It's been physically hard, but nothing compared to what the family's going through. And our hearts go out to them. And the community has just stepped up so much. We've never really had anything like that this close to home.
Well, officials say the boy was last seen wearing a gray fuzzy hoodie with ears, blue and white shoes, and black pants. He has brown hair and green eyes, and just praying that they find him.
5 days, you guys. This is too long. And I have a bad feeling. A really bad feeling. I don't want to, but we all know how this Okay, I don't know how many of you saw this. Uh, this is all we have at that point. Or at this point, I'm sorry. 1 second here. Okay. Let me know if the audio is okay. It is a long time, Crystal, a very long time, especially with
Good evening, and thank you for
his
being here
age.
for a community update on the search for Dane Paulson. I'm Jess Palma, the Public Information Officer for the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office, and today I'm joined by Sheriff Adam Shanks and Sergeant Jason Spano. Before we begin, please take this time to silence any cell phones, radios, or other devices that may cause a disturbance. After our speakers share their statements, there will be time for some questions from members of the media. In just a moment, I will hand this over to Sheriff Shanks, but first I will provide some updates on the ongoing search for Dane. Before I begin, I need to recognize how difficult this has been on Dane's family, especially his parents, Shamet and Aaron. The pain and tragedy that they are facing is unimaginable. Our teams and supporting agencies have been working to find Dane, and our hearts are heavy. I would also like to thank our community for your continued support and concern as we work diligently to bring Dane home. We understand the deep impact this situation has on his family and our community, and we are committed to finding answers. Despite intense search and rescue efforts
This is in Oregon, Crystal.
in the surrounding area and waterways, as well as investigations following up on community tips, Dane has not yet been located. Our teams, search and rescue, mounted posse, and partnering agencies, as well as community volunteers, have thoroughly searched the local area. The search has utilized every tool we've been able to employ, including but not limited to additional personnel and volunteers, drones, canines, thermal imaging, night vision, watercraft, divers, and more. These tools have enabled us to cover more ground in a short time frame and have enabled us to better access hard-to-reach terrain. Lincoln County communities have shown their support by helping search, sharing official updates, reporting tips, and offering food or other accommodations to responders. Over the last 72 hours, searchers have covered over 682 acres and 341 walking miles. Over 2 river miles have been thoroughly searched by divers. At least 195 leads and tips have been investigated.
And see, that's what bugged me is maybe I thought maybe he wasn't in the water because of that, but he's little. He's not going to weigh a whole lot. And I don't even like saying these things out loud, but it's possible if he is in the water, he got snagged on something, maybe. I don't even want to think of that, but that's sadly what I'm probably guessing could have happened. Hopefully nothing like predator animal wise got a hold of him or anything like that, but as you'll hear, this is where they explain all that stuff. So it just bugs the hell out of me.
This investigation is still very active and remains a priority for our team and communities. We want to bring Dane home. Our communities continue to ask for ways they can support Dane's family. Right now, they just want their son back. If you have information related to Dane's disappearance, we ask that you report it to the tip line at.
Cap, that would be amazing. I would love to see things like just once, Seriously, it would be amazing. I agree with you, brother. I do. Welcome, Ray Knightley. Thank you for joining us. Right, with all that brush and everything is what I was thinking last night when I saw this. So, right, SRB. That's my thought too, 100%.
541-265-0669. When sharing information that may help us bring Dane home, be as specific as possible. Note the time, exact location, and get clear photos or videos when possible. Although community volunteers are no longer officially being organized at the volunteer staging area, they may choose to continue to search for Dane on their own. We respectfully remind our community, if they are choosing to continue the search, to keep safety in mind. Avoid searching at night and avoid private property without updated permission from the landowner. As more information becomes available, we will continue to share updates on our Flash Alert page and Facebook. Now I will invite Sheriff Shanks to share his statement.
Good evening. I am Sheriff Adam Shanks. Dane's disappearance is absolutely heartbreaking. His family is experiencing unimaginable pain. As a parent myself, my heart is broken just seeing what they are going through. Our teams and supporting agencies have held this search close to our hearts. On behalf of all responding agencies and community volunteers, I want to express sincere empathy and compassion. I would also like to recognize and thank our community for your continued support and concern as we work to locate Dane. We understand the deep impact that situation has on his family and our community. We are committed to finding answers. I want to thank our communities for doing what they do best during this search, which is coming together to support each other. Over 200 community members throughout our county, across the state, and even surrounding states have responded to help by reporting to the volunteer staging area. This effectively helped us cover the local area faster than would have otherwise been possible. Our communities also have helped by sharing official updates from our page, which helped keep others informed and on the lookout. You've also not hesitated to call in tips that might help us bring Dane home. We know this is a difficult time for Dane's family, and we are doing everything we can to bring him home. From the bottom of my heart, and on behalf of Dane's family, thank you for all you have done. However, we are not finished. I will now invite Sergeant Jason Spano to provide an update on anticipated next steps for the search of Dane.
Morning, Stitches. Thank you for joining us today.
Good evening. I'm Sergeant Jason Spano.
I will say that much, Cap. I agree with you. They've really put the effort in here. I have to say they've been on top of this, and I'm very impressed with that. And I going back to what you said earlier, I wish that we could just get a break and just one time, and this child would be found safe and sound. It would be wonderful.
I know our entire community has been affected by Dane's disappearance, and our hearts are with his family while we work to bring him home. In addition to community members, highly trained personnel, search canines, and specialized equipment have thoroughly covered the local area. This includes ground, water, and air searches. Based on the information from search efforts and following up on tips, we will now be concentrating on a very focused area. So far, the evidence available indicates Dane was at the river's edge before his disappearance. Because of this, we will be focusing the majority of our ongoing resources on searching the Siletz River. We are using drones, divers, watercraft, canines.
So what that tells me, okay, maybe I'm misunderstanding this. He's stating that from what they understand that he was at the river's edge before he disappeared. So that tells me that he was down that hill and he was down there by the edge of the river. Am I wrong? Or are we saying that he was at the top of the hill there? Because river's edge would be down at the bottom of the hill where that drop off is, right by the water. That's how I took this. And I just want to make sure it's understood that way too. That's how I'm taking it, and that's what I'm guessing. And that's why I think that they're now focusing directly on that water, the river now. And that's what I was going to say too. That was, you're in my head today again, SRB. I wonder if the dog tracked them down to the river's edge. That's my guess. Or dogs. That would be the only way you could imagine that they would know that type of information. You know what I mean? So yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. And that's it too. Even if you're not religious, please pray for this baby, please, guys. That's all we can do. And that's the best thing we can do with it and his family. Oh, thank you, Crystal. I appreciate you, dear. Or they maybe did find it. Yeah, that's possible too, SRB. That makes sense too. It does. Welcome, Kathy Tolan. They said last night the same thing, and we can say this is from last night. I'm just replaying this for anybody that may not have seen it, Kathy. And we can say sadly that the poor baby is gone, and I hope not, but it does. And I get it. I know. Sometimes we have to deal with this stuff. Right, Cap. That's what I was saying. It's a 50-foot drop with all that brush. I don't know how he got down there, but he could have. He could have. And that's what they're stating, that River's Edge was the last place that he was before he disappeared. So I don't know.
Canines and even a sign cutter to thoroughly cover the area. A sign cutter is a highly trained individual on tracking techniques that involve finding and following signs left behind by people or animals. The terrain in our overall search area includes surrounding property, forested rough terrain, the Surratt's River, and riverbanks. Due to a thorough search and comprehension of these areas, search operations will now be focusing on a more concentrated area, highlighting the Surratt's River. Although the land within the search area has been thoroughly combed, we cannot 100% guarantee that these areas are clear. With thick, rough terrain, it is possible to miss locating a person, especially a small child.
Welcome, Mel. It's wonderful to see you again. Mel says the river is also running incredibly high right now. I heard that, saw that on the news this morning, actually. Yeah, because it's been raining like crazy. So yes, it's a very good point, and that will make a difference too. Definitely. I hope you're doing awesome, Mel. It's wonderful to see you here. I really appreciate you joining us today.
Hidden by thick brush or other visual impairments, even with specialized equipment and search canines. Official watercraft and divers are concentrating on thoroughly searching the river. We hope to bring Dane home soon. As the sheriff and Jess have both said, this search is ongoing, and we're working to bring Dane back to his family.
Wonderful.
We will now be taking a few related questions from members of the media. Please raise your hand, wait to be called on, and state your first and last name, as well as your organization.
Shelby Slaughter, KT News. We say River's Edge, which sounds very specific, but then we also say for people to call in and be as specific as possible. So is there any reason to believe that Dane may have been taken at the River's Edge?
We do not have any evidence to suggest that there was an abduction or any criminal activity in this case.
There was argument with the Oregonian. So what is the evidence that he was near the River's Edge for his disappearance?
Like I said, we've used the canines and we've used sign cutter as well. There is some impressions down there, but beyond that, that's what we've got so far.
What's the visibility like for the divers? Is that pretty difficult for them to see things underwater?
It's difficult, but I'm being told it's 4 to 5 feet, which is relatively good for what I'm being told on the rivers.
Did you have a question?
Yes, I think you mentioned that you're not.
Yeah, we're at 72 hours now. We have not discussed when we will stop searching. As far as we're going to go until we have decided that we've covered everything we can cover.
Looking at the square mileage covered, you said 2 miles of waterway. Is that correct?
At least 2 miles.
That's what I'm thinking too, SRB, that maybe they saw his little footprints possibly down there. This just breaks my heart. It really does. That would be my guess. That and or the dogs. Okay. That's probably my guess. Or what you said, maybe a toy or something they found in that region, possibly, sadly.
Miles of the Surratt's River has been covered by divers.
And so going forward, are you going to refocus on that 2 miles or move downstream?
We'll probably do a combination of both.
So I don't know if you guys caught that, but they had divers down in there that have covered 2 miles. But like Mel said in here, that river is extremely higher than normal because of all the rain that they've had, which can cause other problems. I know when I used to do water rescue and stuff like that with the fire department, like it definitely changed things for us. We would go in thinking it's going to be this way when it's actually this way because of rain and roll off and stuff like that from like snow or ice, and it changes the depth of the rivers or lake water source in general, and it can make things harder. And plus it can make the water run faster too, which is another problem. Okay, so and again, depending on what, and I hate saying these things out loud again, there's usually in rivers you'll have downed trees and there's a lot of brush around this area we've seen too that can cause snags and things to get stuck and stuff like that, and it's really hard. I mean, you'll find things up. We've seen this before. Nicola Bully's case over in the UK we covered. I still don't think she was in there the way they said she was, but according to that situation there, she was hung up on a tree and it was underneath it. So that's why she wasn't singing, supposedly. But again, here we go. You know what I mean? Um, right. And that's my thought too, is if it's moving quick, and like Mel said again, it's at a higher elevation there. 2 miles may not have been enough. Okay. That's my thoughts. And that's, like I said, all we can do, exactly, Stitches, is pray for the mother and father, well, the whole family and him, and just pray to God that they find him. At this point, I think this is a recovery. I don't think this is a rescue. Okay. I'm still trying to think positive. Something like Cap said, maybe there's a miracle. Maybe something, I don't know. But I'll tell you right now that one thing that we read yesterday really, really upended me, and it really bothered me. That was I don't understand people that do that kind of stuff, but it made me sick, like literally physically sick. And I wish people wouldn't do that. So anyway, we're just gonna keep praying and hope for some kind of a positive outcome. That's the best thing we can do, and know that there could be a negative outcome, and just be prepared for that. That's all. No, that's the whole thing. Because of his age, his size, his weight, 5 days is bad, guys. I mean, it's bad. It's very bad. And the outcome, I know what I'm expecting, and I prepared myself for, of course. But it never hurts to think that way.
The divers we've had a lot of support from outside agencies with the dive teams, and they have done a very good job for us, and we appreciate them. But they are, obviously, it's very physically challenging to be diving on a river. The river's very fast right now. So they will be back and continue to work for us. And that's up to them and the search and rescue people. They're the experts, and they will decide what they're going to focus on.
So is the ground search finished?
No, we have not concluded the ground.
They have not concluded ground search, which is possibly a good thing. And that's what it's supposed to be about, SRB. You do amazing things. So don't you ever doubt yourself or think that it's going to get you in trouble, because you do nothing wrong by any means. So
Ground search. No.
Okay. And then how does the scale change? I mean, it sounds like you're saying like you're refocusing on the river. How does that affect the ground search?
The ground search will continue. It may or may not be scaled back, but it's continuing until we have decided we've covered enough ground. But we are focusing the resources we have and the search area to the river and the river's edge as well.
Going back to your resources, just how many agencies have been going in and out of the river?
We have had 13 divers, and they span from all over the state. I will miss somebody if I name
yes,
them.
ma'am, I do.
Sheriff's offices have sent divers.
Two-parter.
Absolutely, what
Have you
Cap
found
said
any
too.
of Dane's clothing in your search? And two, when you say he was near the riverbank before he disappeared, was he near the riverbank by his home, or had he wandered off?
Let's see. So the first question is no, we have not found any clothing.
Okay.
The second question is he was relatively near his home, correct?
Okay.
We'll take our last question.
You said you were suspending organizing the volunteer search. This is obviously a big community interest. There's a large crowd here. What is your advice to folks who are here that want to help continue the search?
So the organization, as far as staging volunteers here at this park where we all are today, is no longer being actively maintained because there are other priorities with not priorities. There are other commitments that those volunteers have that they have to fulfill on their own. If the community chooses to continue to search on their own, again, keeping safety in mind. This is a rough forested terrain, right? The water can be dangerous. It is still very cold. Keep your own safety in mind. Do not search after dark. Again, low visibility, your basic regular awareness as far as being outdoors in the wilderness. And then a big reminder about private property. We don't have permission to be on other people's property. So keeping in mind, you need permission to be there if you're searching. This concludes our community update. Thank you again for your assistance and support throughout search efforts. For more information and updates on the search for Dane, continue to follow our Flash Alert page, which is flashalert.net/ID/LCSO.
Sorry, she asked
Thank
what the
you.
water temperature was. Do you guys know that?
Between 44 and 46 degrees.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
This is so heartbreaking, you guys. This is so hard. Stitches says 10 miles downstream and work their way back up. They need to search land on both. I agree. I do agree. They need to look at any brush on either side. Underneath it, they need to get down into it. If they got divers that's going down underneath, yeah, that's exactly what they need to do. I agree with that, though. 10 miles down. I don't know if there's any dams in this river, but they do definitely need to go at least 10 miles down and then work their way back up. That's the way that we would do SAR when we did water. We would start off at the end and come back this direction and do grid, depending on how deep it was. That was in like rivers and stuff. Now, lakes, that was a different story, but. Okay, guys. I think that's the same thing. Tomboy sent me. Yeah, flash alert. Okay. 1 second here. Let me check something. Okay, so this was word for word. Thank you, Tomboy. That is exactly what this is exactly what they were saying. So if anybody needs any information or wants any information, like exact words and stuff like that, let me know. I can show you word for word what they said, when they said it, and why. This is really, their flash alerts are amazing the way they put these out. I love it. We need to get these types of alerts on other cases too. As of now, the last flash alert that I have listed in here would be from through yesterday. There's nothing new yet. So so that's, like I said, all we can do is pray. And like I said, at this point, guys, I think this is a recovery, not a rescue. I hate to say that, but that's where I'm at with this. I mean, I have to be realistic, and I've seen many of these situations like this. So just pray that it's nothing else. If that's the case, that they find him for his parents' sake. That's my biggest hope. Thank you, Tomboy, for sending me that. I really appreciate that. And I'll be definitely keeping up with that. Okay. We got 33 peeps in here. Please hit that like button, guys. Just even if you got to pretend like you like me for a little bit, I really appreciate it. Once I'm done, you can go back to hating me. Either way. Just kidding, guys. I'm just kidding. But that definitely helps us get these things out in the algorithm if you can. All right. By the way, Tomboy, that is all working well now. Thank you very much for the help with that. All right, guys. So we're going to get to. Good Lord. Good morning, Peaky and Sunshine. I'm glad that you're both here. Definitely need you here, Sunshine. We ain't got no sun here today. We need it for sure. All right, guys. I'm going to give you a news break on this. And then we'll get into it. One moment.
Since her son went missing, It's been 14 years since her son went missing. The empty heartache for his mother continues.
Jason Jolkowski was 19 when he was last seen in the driveway of his home in Benson. His disappearance still a mystery.
I spoke to Jason's mom, Kelly, who now lives in Seattle. She still has not given up hope.
Omaha police consider it to be one of their most baffling, mysterious cases. How can there just be no leads, no clues? It's just astonishing.
Now, Kelly's hoping that on this 14th anniversary of Jason's disappearance, that someone will step up and provide information. You can call Crime Stoppers or Omaha Police. And we've put contact numbers and more information with this story on our app and at WOWT.com.
Okay, so this one again, you guys, his name is Jason Jolkowski since 2001. This is out of Nebraska. I wonder if JC knows this one. Good morning, Leslie and Billy. Wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. Always love seeing you. And I'm not kidding. When I tell you there's nothing, wait till you see this. This is unbelievable. There is absolutely no evidence, nothing pointing to where this kid could have gone. Nothing. And I can't, it's so hard to deal with. It's like, how? How is this possible? Just saying.
Her son has been missing for 14 years, and today the mother you are about to meet is still searching for answers.
Clemson student Jason Knapp disappeared, and no one seems to know anything. Once again, this day is here.
Hold on. Pulled the wrong link. Sorry, you guys. I hate when this does this to me. Good Lord. Okay, here we go. I mean, how
the
the
curious
audience...
case of Jason Jolkowski is uniquely perplexing.
Well, thank you so much, Leslie and Billy, for the super sticker. God bless. I appreciate the generosity so very much. Very much appreciated. You have no idea. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, here we go, you guys.
There are nearly no clues in his mysterious disappearance. The 19-year-old left his Omaha, Nebraska home on foot in broad daylight and was never seen again. He was walking to his high school to get a ride to work, a short walk that he had made frequently, but this time he didn't make it. Somehow, somewhere in these 8 blocks, something terrible happened. This is the mysterious missing persons case of Jason Jolkowski. Jason was last seen leaving his home, this house, pulling the garbage bins in from the curb. It had been a seemingly normal Wednesday morning that summer. Jason's parents, Kelly and James, went to work, leaving their 2 teenage sons at home, Jason and his 13-year-old brother, Michael. At about 10:30, Jason's boss at the Italian fast food restaurant Fazoli's called him to see if he wanted to pick up some extra hours and work the lunch rush in addition to his scheduled dinner shift. Jason had already planned to work at 5:30 that evening, a shift that his father was going to drive him to after he got back from his job. Jason had a car and would have driven himself, but the car was in the shop after being damaged by hail from a recent summer storm. Jason was saving up to go back to school and eagerly picked up the extra hours. He first considered going in on foot, telling his manager that he would walk the 4 miles to the Fazoli's on 80th and Cass Street. However, one of his coworkers, Teresa, hearing that Jason would be walking that long distance before working a full day at the restaurant, called him instead. She told the Omaha World-Herald that he said, "Okay, just meet me at Benson." According to his mom, Kelly, It was Jason's idea to be picked up at the school. He wasn't very good at giving directions, and Teresa already knew how to get to the school. It wouldn't be far for him to walk and meet her there. Jason put on his work pants and shoes and headed out the door in a white shirt and a blue hat, carrying his red Fazoli's work shirt. It was about 10:45 a.m., and before he left, he dragged the trash cans in back from the curb of his home. His brother Michael heard the commotion and saw him from the window. It was the last time he ever saw his older brother. Jason never made it the 8 blocks to Benson. He never showed up. By the time 11:15 rolled around,
Okay. Well, you just got here, but okay. I understand. Thank you for stopping by, Leslie and Billy. Appreciate you guys. Welcome, Miss Peggy. Good to see you today. Be safe out there, Leslie.
Teresa had started to worry. It wasn't like Jason to be late. At 11:30, she walked to a nearby gas station to use the payphone. Jason's brother Michael answered and at first pretended to be Jason. But when he noticed the panic in Teresa's voice, he dropped the act and told Teresa that Jason wasn't home, that he had left nearly 45 minutes earlier. In broad daylight, midday on a Wednesday, Jason had simply vanished. Friends and relatives were and are dumbfounded, the Omaha World Herald published. That first night, Jason's family was panicked. It was so unlike him to skip out on work. An unusually polite person, people described Jason as tall, shy, and quiet, someone who generally kept to himself. His friends said that he was the kind of person who would go out of his way to help others. As a teenager, he was very responsible and hardworking, didn't drink or abuse drugs. He had been very involved in his local parish, Holy Name Catholic Church. The associate priest at the time, Reverend Edward Vila, called Jason a prayerful kid who was very friendly, very quiet. Jason spent a lot of time at Holy Name. He volunteered regularly as a lector and for perpetual adoration, which involves continuous prayer from parishioners day and night. Church members actually
That's a weird thing. Is he walked out of his door? For those of you that didn't catch it, he walked out of his door after his boss called, gave him some extra hours. This is a residential neighborhood. Okay, it's not like it's out in the country or where everybody's around. Okay, it's a very busy residential neighborhood. He his neighbor watched him pull the garbage cans in, and then headed off towards where the high school was to be picked up by his coworker. You see the neighborhood. Everybody sees everything. You see everything, so on and so forth. This is why it's so strange, and it gets worse. It just gets stranger because there's nothing that was left behind. Nothing. No idea as to what could have happened. Is why I couldn't fathom the fact that you're in a inner city residential neighborhood and nobody sees or hears anything. It blew my mind. So that's why this one is so weird to me.
actually take turns praying at the church, sort of like a marathon prayer relay. Jason had a learning disability that made him a little slower to comprehend things, especially if there was distractions or noise. But he was also an honor roll student and described as having higher than average intelligence. He had an exceptional memory, especially when it came to sports statistics. His mother told Ed Denzel from the Unfound podcast, he was like a walking sports trivia dictionary of sorts. You could say, who won the World Series in 1953? And he would know the answer. His learning disability never stopped him from pursuing his goals. Jason had wanted for a long time to be a disc jockey, and in 2001 was saving money to go back to college to study broadcasting. He had already attended Iowa Western Community College and had to drop out due to a lack of funding. On air at Iowa Western's radio station, 89.7 The River, he had been known as JJ the DJ. At the station, his colleagues described him as quiet, funny, and nice. A friend and fellow DJ, Sarah James, said that he would do anything for anybody, and she described him as upbeat, saying, when he was on air, he was so enthusiastic and so peppy. While he discussed a wide variety of topics on his show, from music to relationships, he preferred to talk about sports. He was so good at remembering player statistics and devoted to several teams: the Cubs, the Broncos, and, like many Nebraskans, the Huskers. Having to drop out of college and leave the radio station had been tough on Jason. His mom used the word heartbreaking. However, things were starting to look up. He was working extra hours at Fazoli's and had lined up a job as a customer service representative at Citel Corp. The new job would mean more money for school, and the company offered a tuition program. At 19 years old, Jason officially was an adult, so his parents waited 24 hours to call the police. Law enforcement took the missing persons report for Jason, but didn't really share the Jolkowski's concerns about his disappearance. They initially treated him like a runaway. And for 9 days, there was no official search.
9 days. It took them to start an investigation into looking for this kid. 9 days. That blows my mind. I mean, come on, he was 19, I get it, but still, 9 days. And here's the thing, when the parents or the family knows the type of person he is, a type of kid he is, whatever you want to call it, and they know that he's not going to be one to take off, he's not this, he's not that. 9 days it took, guys, for them to do anything with this. You know what can happen in 9 days? I mean, come on. This is insane. This was definitely a ball drop by law enforcement with this one. And it's sad because in this kid could be in another country in 9 days. Okay. I'm just saying, like, there's so many things that you lose out on in that period of time. It's almost 2 weeks. It's insane. It's completely a ball drop, in my opinion. I'm sorry.
For Jason or his route. Those first few days and weeks without Jason were particularly hard on his family. His mother, Kelly, told reporters that she had felt numb, saying, quote, "I remember sitting on the couch by the phone because I just kept hoping the phone would ring. It was almost like I had to tell myself, oh, you need to eat something. Oh, you need to take a shower, or you need to go to the bathroom. It's like you're in this alternative reality of disbelief that this horrible thing is happening." Members of the Holy Name congregation put yellow ribbons up on trees and light poles all throughout the neighborhood. They sent out prayer chains across the world via email. Kelly heard from one 82-year-old Canadian woman who was saying 4 rosaries a day for Jason. Finally, hearing his parents' pleas and finding that Jason had not picked up his repaired vehicle or his paychecks from Fazoli's, the Omaha police canvassed the neighborhood on June 23rd, 10 full days after he was last seen. There were mounted searches on horseback, ground searches on foot, and a helicopter with the...
And again, 10 days later, what good's that going to do? Okay. Nothing. I mean, if somebody took him by perchance, they've been gone. Okay. Now there's a theory too, because he was on foot, that there may not have even been a car involved, you guys. That somebody in a local home in this neighborhood may have spoken to him and tried to, maybe because he was one of those kids that was very nice and was helpful, wanted to help people, and somebody said, hey, can you help me with something, and drug him inside a house in the neighborhood. That's one of the theories with this too. But they waited 10 days to canvass the entire neighborhood, and I don't know, door knocking and all that other stuff. But 10 days? Come on. It makes me so angry. I don't care how old someone is. If they are missing, immediately act. Yes, agreed. 100%, Peggy. 100%. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. Right. That's one of their theories, that somehow he was walking. But the thing is, the only reason why that theory doesn't float so well, you guys, is because he was very, very responsible, especially with his job, and knowing that he had to be at work at a specific time. He had to meet his coworker to be picked up at the high school at that specific time. They don't think that he would have stopped off to help somebody knowing that he had to be there. But if he knew that it could have only taken a matter of seconds to do something, sure, he would be the one that would say, yeah, I can help you real quick. And then somebody drags him in, and you know what I mean? So yes, either way, that's a very plausible situation here. Welcome, Mystic. Thank you for joining us today.
The use of infrared technology, but there was no sign of Jason or any clues to his whereabouts. Omaha Police Detective Jim Shields said, I know his parents have expressed concern about how the investigation was handled in the beginning. But in missing adult cases, we often wait a few days because adults have the right to come and go freely. The next day was Jason's 20th birthday, Sunday, June 24th. His family had hoped to see him walk through the door, excited to celebrate another year's passing with cake. But that didn't happen. On Monday, June 25th, police spent several hours searching Mahoney State Park after a tip was submitted that he may have been there. But there was no evidence of Jason at the park, and after reviewing a photo of him, the witness was uncertain if it had been Jason after all. Omaha Police Officer Meg Fricke said they had received few leads in Jason's disappearance. In a prepared statement, the Jolkowskis said, we'd have liked to see more activity in the first crucial hours. But we do feel they stepped up to the plate to do all they could, and in the end, they did a proper investigation. We were pleased by the meetings they had with us, following up on any leads, talking to his friends, checking the computer, and conducting interviews. End quote. All of the Fazoli's employees were questioned by the police and by a private detective. The manager had been calling in various staff on short notice, and it was not out of the ordinary for Jason to get a call to come in before his scheduled shift. Teresa was also interviewed repeatedly and cleared of suspicion. Her story matched what the school.
And here's the thing, you guys, something else too. He was supposed to be off that day. Okay. So if somebody was purposely going after him or like followed his schedule, knew his work schedule or something like that, and was going after him purposely to hurt him or grab him or something like that, he was not supposed to be working that day. So they wouldn't have known that he was going to be going to do this, if you know what I'm saying. So that's something else too. I don't know. It's strange. And like I said, or they're saying now, they interviewed her, I don't know how many times, and nothing changed. Nothing at all. And there's camera footage from the high school and the middle school. He has to walk past the middle school to get to the high school. Nothing. He had to walk down the main road in the city to get to those areas too. Nothing. So wherever this happened, you guys, it happened from his home within this neighborhood, like in a quick, like very quickly after he stepped away from his home. He never got anywhere outside of his neighborhood. Never. Okay. So that's even stranger to me because it's right there within that neighborhood that the whole world can see something going on. If somebody were to grab him and yank him in a car or a van or something, it would have been seen. That's where the theory came up that maybe somebody pulled him into a home, which does make some sense. But again, he had to meet her at a specific time at the school, which was 7 blocks away. And it's about 10 minutes to get there. I can't imagine him stopping off, not wanting to leave her hanging. You know what I mean? So welcome the missing. Thank you for joining us today.
Was a runaway. His parents were, and still are certain that this is not what happened. Not without his car or any money. They estimated that he had only $60 in cash on him. They don't think that he would have run away wearing his work pants and shoes or with people waiting on him. It's just not who Jason was. His friend Amanda Goodman said that he'd never leave his family like that, saying, quote, he loves his parents and his brother more than anything in the world. He'd be talking to me on the phone and he'd put me on hold so that he could tuck his little brother into bed. His family came first. And police no longer believe that Jason ran away either. Jason's friends and family also don't think that he would have harmed himself. There's no evidence that he took a weapon with him, and to this day, no body has been located.
Welcome, Miss Paula. Wonderful to have you here today. Hope you're having a great day. Thank you for joining us.
He had no history of depression and had been in good spirits the night before. His parents had hosted a dinner with some family friends.
So that's another part of the that was talked about, Peggy, that they believed that it had to have been somebody that he knew, but it would only be offering him a ride from his neighborhood to the school. That's it. Because he wouldn't have gotten into a car with somebody he didn't know. And therefore, in turn, it had to have been somebody he knew that picked him up if he got into a car, which makes, you know what I mean? But the thing is, and that too, though, is nobody knew that he would be leaving. It was his day off. He should have just been staying at home that day, so nobody would be watching to know that he was going to leave at a certain time. That's weird too. You know what I mean? So that's the other side of this. This one baffles the hell out of me. It's crazy.
And they had played games at the table, saying silly things to make each other laugh. Jason had lost, his mom recalled, often first to laugh. Additionally, Jason had a new job to look forward to and a route forward with school. His father, Jim, also believed that his strong faith would have kept him from taking his own life. Perhaps he had been a victim of a hit and run. This theory is debated quite a bit online, but on these streets, in broad daylight, how could that have gone unnoticed? Jason was a tall young man and would not have been easily manipulated or moved if he had been incapacitated. If something had occurred while crossing the street, it seems unlikely that no one would have witnessed an accident of that significance. Jason's family believes that he was likely abducted and then killed. And it seems that at least some law enforcement officers now agree. In fact, today, Jason's case is classified as a homicide. His brother Michael's account of Jason bringing in the garbage bins and then walking towards the high school was corroborated by a neighbor, Chester Link. Still, towards the high school is vague. No one else remembered seeing him that day. Did he walk somewhere other than the high school first? Maybe he decided to swing by the church or stop at a neighbor's home. There were multiple sex offenders living in the area where Jason disappeared. Reports show that detectives attempted to interview all of them, which I think means that they didn't actually interview them all, which is a little concerning. Law enforcement did also search the home of one sex offender, but after multiple interviews and that single search, they found no evidence that suggested any involvement in Jason's disappearance. Law enforcement in Omaha still had no leads a year into their investigation, but Jason's family were not discouraged. His mom said, "I think we'll always have hope. We have hope, and we will continue to have hope until we know what has occurred." They have not given up on Jason and have continued to put up posters and ask the public for help and prayers. They also start pushing for a state law that would allow law enforcement to share information about missing people. Sharing details and photos of missing persons with the public and other law enforcement agencies can be crucial in solving cases. It may seem obvious to us today, but in 2002, the internet was still so new and there was no comprehensive missing persons database online yet. Kelly, though, was very tech-savvy, building her own website, www.missingjason.com, and she was leading email campaigns to spread their story. Both parents appeared on The John Walsh Show and Montel Williams, hoping that getting the story out there would mean that someday they reached the right person, someone with answers. In 2003, after 2 years without Jason, they started Project Jason, a nonprofit to benefit all missing persons. Kelly's new website, projectjason.org, included photos of missing adults as well as children. The organization served a wide range of needs, giving a voice to others that had vanished and raising awareness through the distribution of brochures and ID kits. Discovering that there weren't many resources for the families of the missing, Project Jason starts hosting a coping skills retreat to help people connect with others and deal with the grief and loss of their loved ones. Kelly described the pain and horror of her experience, saying, quote, "You're just kind of in a limbo because you don't know what has become of them, and you keep having the ongoing loss." 3 years later, Jason's car still sits in the Jolkowski's driveway. All of his possessions still remain in their home. "I have hope that he is alive," Kelly told the Omaha World Herald. "If you lose hope, you stop looking. That's not fair to the person who is missing or to other family members who love him and miss him." That summer, in 2004, Project Jason hosts a benefit concert. 4 bands and many volunteers donate their time to raise money for the nonprofit. Also, Jason's coworker, Teresa, used the payphone at this gas station to call his house that day. She had waited 30 minutes at Benson for him to arrive. She didn't have a cell phone, not all teens did back in 2001, and had to cross the street to find a payphone. Jason, who actually did have a cell phone at the time, has not used it since his disappearance. Police found that he hadn't touched his bank account or attempted to use his debit card either. Kelly, who has been hard at work keeping Jason's story in the public eye, has also been hard at work getting healthy. A friend on a missing persons website encouraged her to take care of yourself because it's going to be hard. It's going to be tiring, and if you are weak, you won't make it. It was a real inspiration to Kelly, who adjusted her diet and started walking over her lunch hour. Soon she was down 15 pounds, and then 30, finally losing up to 200 pounds through healthy eating and exercise. She and her husband Jim pick up biking. It was a fun new hobby that also became a new avenue for raising awareness for Jason. The Jolkowskis started Miles for the Missing, an organization of coordinated bike rides that raised money and awareness of missing persons. All across the country, they rode from Nebraska to New York. Groups of riders stopped at schools along the way, promoting children's safety. Eventually, Jason's Law passed in 2005. It created that comprehensive missing persons database online with information and pictures, as well as a toll-free hotline for missing persons, and public education programs on public safety. It also brought attention to crucial issues with missing adults. Kelly told the media, "When you have somebody disappear as an adult rather than a minor, it's an entirely different situation. There's no federal law that mandates them. Unless the state has passed this legislation, they're not mandated to do anything. They don't even have to take the case. Period." Today in Nebraska, they are now required to take the case. Law dictates the minimum information collected for missing persons, as well as its distribution to other law enforcement agencies and the Criminal Investigation Division, who manages Nebraska's database of the missing. Year after year passed without Jason. Often the family would hold events on the anniversary of his disappearance to remember their son and brother. They continued to hang posters and hold candlelight vigils to pray for his return. In 2011, a tree and a plaque dedicated to Jason was placed on the Keystone Trail, one that he had loved to walk. Each year is difficult, but the family forged forward, finding hope and inspiration helping others. Over the course of many years, Project Jason touches so many lives, distributing tens of thousands of missing person flyers for missing people of all ages. In 2018,
pass. We're not traveling 1,000 kilometers in West Antarctica. So the men who were there actually had to improvise, and they welded it together.
Sorry, mouse got stuck again. Anyway, So that is Jason's story. Again, I don't get it. There's nothing. Thank you, SRB. There's nothing that leads anybody to believe anything. There's nothing that shows anything. People don't vanish into thin air, folks. They just, especially not in the middle of a residential neighborhood. Come on. What are we talking about here? I don't either. I don't either. SRB, that's the only thing that makes any sense. Unless somebody grabbed him, knocked him out cold or something, and threw him in a vehicle, how did you do it without anybody seeing or hearing anything? You know what I mean? That's my issue with that. So, yeah, I truly feel like he could have been drug into a home. Somebody saw him or drug him into a house or a garage or something and did something to him. But, and here's the thing, and you guys know where I'm going with this. If they would have started looking for him and canvassed the neighborhood immediately, they could have figured that out. But they waited 10 days before they canvassed the neighborhood, and anything can go down within a 10-day period of time, you guys, and you know that. There it is. And that's the problem right there. They screwed up. They dropped the ball. Let's say the dude walks to the door, screams, help, heart attack. And Jason, yep, that's my thought. That's my thought. It makes no sense. And it's been how many years now, you guys? It's been a long time now. We're beyond 16 years at this point, okay? And there's nothing. There is nothing. There's no evidence pointing any direction. There were no clues. Nothing. There's nothing of this kid's anywhere. Nobody's seen it. And it blows my mind. Oh, well, yeah. There's plenty of places anywhere to bury a body in 10 days. 100%. Or to put somebody in the trunk of a car and drive them out of the neighborhood after you've done what you've done and take them somewhere else. Facts are facts. I mean, but this is all, in my opinion, every bit of this is to be blamed on law enforcement, in this opinion, in this situation, okay? It absolutely is my opinion that law enforcement screwed completely up. They were not looking for him whatsoever for 10 days. Nothing. Nobody was, other than his parents, but that's it. Yeah, Sebastian's case is this. That it kind of reminded me of Sebastian's case a little bit. Okay, so there's that, you guys. But even with Sebastian's case, there was something. I mean, this has nothing. Like the kid took his garbage cans back to his house, started walking, and disappeared and vanished into thin air. Yep. Yes. In a 10-day period of time, anything can happen, you guys. So that's what I'm saying. This is crazy to me. I don't get it. I don't know why they waited 10 flipping days to go look for this kid. That's the other problem. That's the main problem. That's why this Jason has never been found, in my opinion. That's why they don't know what happened to Jason, in my opinion, because they waited 10 days. They dropped the ball. Yeah, I'm with you and SRB on this. I think a neighbor did something. I truly feel like that. So, all right. Next up, this one's even weirder. This is so strange to me because there's nothing. It shows nothing. There's no anything leading to anywhere, to anyone, to anything. Period. So that's why it's such a strange situation to me. But this next one, is strange. Very strange. One minute. Those are facts. What you just said there, absolute facts. Because of protocol, you have to wait so many days, this, that, and everything else. Bullshit. I'm sorry. These cases could be solved within a day, 24 hours, if they would get on the ball and do the things that they should be doing, as compared to their stupid protocols. I'm sorry. All right. Hold on, it's just loading slow. So okay, we're almost in. It's coming, guys. Bear with me. Thank you for your patience. All right, here we go. I don't know why this took so long. All right, again, this gentleman's name is Robert Carl Disch, and I'll let him explain it for you. Here we go.
Bit of a strange location for a brain scratch mystery. Antarctica. Here's a map of it thanks to Wikipedia, and let's learn just a little bit about this continent that, quite honestly, doesn't pop up on this channel a whole lot. Antarctica is Earth's southernmost continent. It contains the geographic South Pole and is situated in the Antarctic region of the Southern Hemisphere, almost entirely south of the Antarctic Circle, and is surrounded by the Southern Ocean. At 14 million square kilometers, or about 5,400,000 square miles, it is the fifth largest continent. Antarctica is nearly twice the size of Australia. About 98% of Antarctica is covered by ice that averages 1.9 kilometer, or about 1.2 miles in thickness. Sounds, I mean, I think we have it bad here in Minnesota, but that sounds really intense. Antarctica, on average, is the coldest, driest.
Yes, we've moved on to the next case, SRB. Sorry. This next one, like I said, that's all I have about Jason Jolkowski. There's nothing else out on him. I dug and dug and dug and dug and dug. Nothing else. That's it. What I have is what I have. So that's all maybe we can hope that one day, for the parents' sake, that maybe something will come about. But that's all we got, guys. So we're moving on to the second case, which is Robert Carl Disch. This is the gentleman that went missing. Oh, you're okay. You're okay, SRB. This is the gentleman that went missing out of Antarctica. This one's even stranger. So I think you guys will get into this one too, because it's wild. It just doesn't make sense at all. So, and this one's being provided. Footage is provided via Lord Nart's brain scratch, whatever you want to call it. Thank you to him for that, for doing this, because he did a great job with this. So, anyway, on we go.
And windiest continent, and has the highest average elevation of all the continents. Most of Antarctica is a polar desert. Basically what that means is they get an extremely low amount of rain there. It's despite the fact that you're standing basically on ice, it is extremely dry. The temperature in Antarctica has reached negative 89.2 Celsius or negative 128 Fahrenheit. I cannot imagine.
Welcome, James, and thank you, sir, for that. Thank you for supporting all of us. We appreciate you so very much, James, and I hope you're having a wonderful day, you and Marion both. Thank you for being here, sir.
What that cold is like. Though the average for the third quarter, the coldest part of the year, is negative 63 Celsius or negative 81 Fahrenheit. I still can't imagine how cold that is. Anywhere from 1,000 to 5,000 people reside throughout the year at various research stations scattered across the continent. And that is where today's mystery comes into play. We're talking about a mystery that happened at a research station way back in the 60s. And here is an actual photo of the station at that time. The station that we're talking about is called Byrd Station.
And I don't know if you guys know this, but truly, there really isn't anything else in Antarctica except for research stations, scientists, so on and so forth that do this. Not too many people don't live here. You can't, okay? And you're not actually allowed to fly into Antarctica on a plane and just get off and go walking around. You're not allowed to do this. You can't just go on vacation to Antarctica. Not that anybody would, but you can't, okay? So, interesting. There's that. So understand that the only people that are here, especially in this area, are the people that work at this Byrd station. And it's very vast around here. There's nothing else around it, okay? It's just this. If you guys ever saw the movie The Thing, of course, you all know what that is. It had Kurt Russell, I think it is, yeah. Anyway, that's basically what they did. Is they worked at a research base out in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing else around, just this. So for this guy to go missing here, how? Explain that to me, how? Because there's nowhere to go, okay? And this is what blew my mind. So I'm gonna shut up now and let him tell the story, because this is wild.
It's a former research station established by the United States in West Antarctica. And the station consisted of a set of 4 prefabricated buildings and was erected in less than 1 month by the U.S. Navy Seabees. It was commissioned on January 1st, 1957. The original station, Old Byrd, lasted about 4 years before it began to collapse under the snow. Construction of a second underground station on a nearby location began in 1960, and it was used until 1972. And here we've got, once again, a map of Antarctica, and you can see Byrd Station clearly on the west side of that map. And here at the Wausau Daily Herald, which is a paper out of Wisconsin, we see a picture, and under it, they have the caption, "Lost in Antarctica." Carl Robert Disch, 26, Monroe, is missing in an Antarctic storm. It was reported Saturday. He is believed to have died in the sub-zero temperatures. And this is an article from May 10th, 1965. And I can tell you, There is a longer form of the article that was written for the Associated Press, and throughout May, it just went right across the country. I mean, we're talking national story, just picked up all over the country. Not a whole lot of follow-up, but thankfully there is a follow-up about a year and a half later. Might give us some answers about what happened here, but let's find out a little bit more about Carl and the mystery first. Over at Find a Grave, there is an entry for him. Carl R. Disch, ionospheric physicist for the National Bureau of Standards Boulder Labs, disappeared on May 8th, 1965 from the ionosphere forward scatter station near Byrd Station in the Antarctic. Now, I had to do a little digging. The ionosphere is the ionized part of Earth's upper atmosphere from about 60 kilometers or 37 miles to 1,000 kilometers or 620 mile altitude. It has practical importance because, among other functions, it influences radio propagation to distant places on the Earth. And I think the easiest way I could describe that is they essentially aim the radio waves at the ionosphere, and they're able to bounce off of it so that the radio waves come back down to Earth in different locations. So that's the type of work that he was doing there. But what happened? Over at southpolestation.com, let's dig into the story here. Carl Robert Disch, a National Bureau of Standards scientist wintering over at Byrd Station, customarily traveled between the main station complex and the radio noise building performing his scientific studies. He had traveled the route over 25 times so far this season. Now, I haven't really covered them here on the channel, but I have looked into a few mysteries that are dealing with this type of situation. And keep in mind, these buildings are not extremely large. You have people that have to live in close quarters. There's a lot of potential for an extremely challenging mental landscape, let's just say, in terms of this type of work. But on top of that, you have to go from building to building. And occasionally what they will do is they will have a line that runs from one building to the next, so that if you go outside, it's dark a whole lot of the time out there. And of course, you could get snow blind if there's severe weather that's going on. You can hold on to this cable and move from one building to the next. So keep that in mind as we go through this here. Supposedly, this is a route he had done 25 times. At 9:15 a.m. on the 8th of May, 1965, Disch departed the radio noise building, presumably returning to the main station complex 7,000 feet south of the radio noise building. Now, 7,000 feet is over a mile, about a mile and a quarter. A hand line runs from the meteorology building at the main station to the ladder at the base of the radio noise building. When by 10 o'clock, Disch had not arrived back at Byrd, a vehicle search party departed the station to search the area of the hand line. About 11:30, his trail was picked up leading west of Byrd Station. It led to the southwest corner of the skiway, a distance of about 4 miles. So already you have to wonder what is going on. And it's interesting because they don't give us a lot of detail in terms of what's going on with his tracks. Is it a dead straight shot where he's walked 4 miles, or did he try to double back at some point? What gets me is if he's done this walk 25 times and he knows it's about a mile and a quarter, if he's walking for more than an hour, I would imagine in those conditions, he should realize something's wrong. And at that point, would it be terribly hard to turn around and to use your tracks to get back? Unfortunately, like I said, we don't have enough detail about how his tracks were going, but it seems like something really wrong was happening here, because he walked 4 miles away when he should have only been walking about a mile and a quarter to get to where he was going.
And that's what this is. Some X-Files shit to me, you guys, is what it reminded me of. There's something that seems to have drawn his attention away from the direction he should have been going. Okay. But again, think about this. There's nothing there. They have a helipad where they would get like deliveries of supplies that they needed to survive and stuff like that. Okay. But that's it. So what could have drawn his attention away from the route that he took every day 25 times, all back and forth, back and forth. Always did this. What could have drawn his attention to go that direction? 4 miles, mind you. Not a half a mile to where he was supposed to be going. The tracks didn't end. That's the weird thing. And he may not explain that. I have another one that will. It's just crazy to me. They went as far as, at some point, you'll hear maybe, that they went as far as 12 miles out looking for him. Nothing. God, and listen, in Antarctica, it is, Peggy. That's the thing. In Antarctica, I would imagine that the weather would have got him. Okay. I would imagine the weather would have gotten him, hit frostbite, hypothermia, and he would just collapse, right? Sure. Okay. That's my point. But guess what? If that happens, guess what? You're going to find a body laying somewhere within the region, froze to death. They found nothing. Nothing. Which blows my mind, because where'd you go? Yes, he veered off of the hand line. Something drew his attention that direction. That's why I said this is like some X-Files stuff, you guys. It freaks me out. So yeah, there's nothing out here. There's animals here and there, but they carry certain weapons to protect them from that. And that's how all these researchers are. But again, you were going a mile max to the one building to another to do your work. And you let go of the hand line and you went 4 miles in a different direction out of the way completely. For what? That 4 miles is a decent amount of, it's a decent amount there. I don't know, SRB. Is it a Yeti? Could it be? I mean, just think about it. And then they went outside of that. They took 12 miles outside this looking for him and nothing. No body, no clothing, nothing. Not a finger, a toe, an ear. They found nothing from this man. And he wasn't old. He was young. It was like 20. I wrote it down. 25, I think. He was in decent shape. He was, he had the right clothing on, all that stuff. Mom is in the house. Mom says, not if you went into a crevice or it was a bagooger. Polar bear alien. This is Antarctica, you guys. This is a place that we're not allowed to just show up at any time that we want to. You cannot take a flight. I looked all this up. You cannot take a flight into Antarctica from anywhere. Nowhere. Any country. They have some kind of a governmental pact with all these surrounding countries that surround this. Nobody is allowed to fly into Antarctica unless you are with the government. Period. And that's factual information. And I was just like, whoa, wait a minute. Why? They do not want you there. Not to mention it's miserable. It's freezing cold. There's nothing there. There's no houses or any of that shit. You're not allowed to be there unless you belong to one of these research groups. And the research groups don't last very long either. That's another thing. It's weird. They're there for certain periods of time and then they're gone. Great to see you, Mom. I hope you're having a great morning. Thank you for joining us today. So, not just everybody can show up. And when they come in and they do like supply drops and stuff, those people are cleared with like government clearance to do that shit. From the way it reads. So I was like, okay. So interesting, isn't it? Like I said, this reminds me of the X-Files. I'm telling you, it was a CLD version of Mel's Hole or a Cougar. I will stand on that hill. Okay, Mom, you stand there. She's probably very close to being right, guys. Okay, that's the only thing I could pull out of this. So, very cold. It was a cold version of Mel's Hole. Oh yeah. So I'll let them explain this, but like I said, he went 4 miles where they saw his tracks to 4 miles outside of where he should have been. They went as far as 12 miles, which is a long trek. Nothing at all. Okay. So, but also perhaps he got severely disoriented, kept walking, but in those conditions, I certainly wouldn't think he would. No. They would have found a body that's 100% found him. Okay. Either something grabbed him or he fell into something. But according to what I read, there was nothing opened up anywhere around there that he could have fallen into. Like I said, I'm gonna let him tell it, but just saying.
At this point, the search party returned to the station to refuel. They returned to the field and spent 3 more hours trying to pick up the trail, but to no avail. Winds of 25 to 30 knots and drifting snow covered the tracks made by Disch. The search party returned to Bird at about 6:15 in the evening. So obviously, they spent the entire day out there searching time and time again, trying to find him. At about 7 p.m., another search party was sent to investigate the area of the supply line, Emergency Jamesway, and Dump. No tracks were found. At 7:50 p.m., all able hands were mustered and made a human chain search from the dump area to the end of the skiway. Flares were fired off every half hour from the Aurora Tower.
Yes, ma'am. You would think there would be. There would have to be tracks somewhere, but they're gone. Not to mention the wind blowing, the snow, and this and that. But still, it just stopped. They just stopped. That's crazy. They said from the article I read on it, when I read it, the ice was solid, like feet thick, not inches, feet. 3 to 4 feet thick in most spots, okay, at the very minimal. So a crack, nope. This is Antarctica, folks. This is not our backyard in the wintertime. This shit is thick. This like holds no bone. Even Lake Erie doesn't get this thick. That's only the biggest lake I can think of that freezes over. I mean, it could be, but they even went out. I'll let them explain it because I'm going to ruin it.
And floodlights were rigged over the station. Visibility conditions eventually prevented the flares from being useful, and they were discontinued. So you can see here, we've got a very intensive search. We literally have everyone getting together, sweeping, trying to find where he could be, and they can't. And this actually goes on for all of that day and into the next. Another vehicle search party was launched at about 6 p.m. on May 9th. It covered a 1 mile wide by 9 mile long area running south of the skiway. The party found occasional tracks and followed them to about 4 miles south of the station, where they disappeared. There was no noticeable shortening of stride in these tracks. Now, when I look into cases like this and I hear details like that, I start wondering, is this folklore? I couldn't find a very good source of where that information was coming from. But people that talk about this case will bring that up frequently. It's interesting that there was no shortening of stride. It would seem like.
And that's the thing. If the man were to get, this is just from what I know of dealing with stuff like this, working in EMS and stuff, okay? Frostbite, hypothermia. I've dealt with hypothermia patients before, guys. It's not fun. They weaken quickly. The strides should have shortened up, meaning he was slowing down and possibly collapsing. The strides would get shorter and shorter. They don't just disappear. And if they stop, then there's going to be a body there somewhere within that mass, okay? Of that area, I'm sorry. And there was nothing. The stride stayed the same through the whole thing and then just disappeared at 4 miles out. Now, mind you, they went out 12 miles past this. Nothing. There were no cracks in the ice. There was no crevices that they ran into, going along with what Mom said. Well, and a lot of times, yeah, people that end up with hypothermia, they will take their clothes off because they start to get super hot because stupid microphone. Sorry, you guys. As soon as I get this cord, I promise you I'll have this new microphone. I promise you. It's sitting here waiting. I just need a new cord for it. Anyway, so the man veered off, just so that we catch up with this. The man veered off of the hand rope that he had that they used make sure that they would stay in the right area, because sometimes it gets blinding out there. You can't see because of the blistering snow and all that stuff. Can you guys hear me now? Yes, no, maybe so. Can you hear me? You want me to sing? Obla dee, obla da. Yes, no. Somebody say something or I'll start singing. Okay. See, you saved everybody, SRB. You don't want to hear me sing. Anyway, so he veered off of the path he was taking. Bagoogers and ice gremlins. I love it, Mom. And they followed his tracks for up to 4 miles, came back, because you can only withstand that weather for so long, okay? They did it again. See, I don't think he has those facts, but I have another one that does. Yes, you saved the day, SRB. And went out 12 miles, which is, like 8 miles past where they stopped the first time. And because of that, Cap, new microphone fund. Thank you, sir. You didn't have to do that. I will be sure that once that goes through next month, I will be able to get that cord, sir. It's just a cord. It's not the mic. I have the mic here. I just need a cord. The cord went bad. Anyway, yes, exactly, Peggy. And there was nothing. There was no body. There was no clothing that he dispersed. There was no footprints or anything. So I really appreciate that, Cab. That was beyond generous of you, my friend. It really was. You guys don't have to do those things, though. I really appreciate that. You guys are amazing people. You really are. I just can't, like, it's almost like something picked him up off the ground and took off with him. Okay? That's how it reads to me. And that's why I said this reminds me of some kind of X-Files shit. It's what it does, you guys. It's crazy. Too cold for leprechauns. Yes, very generous, my friend. Very generous. Appreciate you, Cap, very much. All right. On we.
Like he was trying to keep up a very healthy pace of movement. And, if you've ever been lost, and I don't think it's happened to me since I was a child, you know that you don't just pick a direction and keep shooting off in that same direction at the same tempo.
Once we get through this, if we have some time, I'm going to show you some stuff about Antarctica that's going to make this even more interesting.
Start doubting yourself. You start wondering what's going on. You might stop for a bit, maybe walk around in a circle, or at least ease up. But keep in mind, we're talking about harsh, freezing weather conditions. So it's quite possible that he was keeping up his tempo as a means of trying to keep himself warm while he was trying to figure out what was going on. I'm just baffled by this question of, why wouldn't he have turned around? I mean, it seems like we have this guy just walking off.
Mom's saying, Peggy, kinda. We will cover Aiden tonight. I'm going to be covering Aiden's story again. I haven't touched it for a year or so. I'm going to go and do the whole thing again. So, to bring his story back to light again, disoriented, and he could have just kept walking. It's a good point, Mom. Very much so. Very much so. I bet Molly can make a pic of an ice gremlin. She probably already has one, Mom, to be honest with you. I guarantee you she can pull a map for this, if nothing else.
Not with the cable in his hand, which he's supposed to be holding onto a cable, going off in a strange direction and disappearing. Very, very odd. And they also note here that Disch was fully clothed with the customary Antarctic clothing. And here's a bit of a photo.
And that's the thing too, you guys, is there was no reason for him to go the direction that he went. There's nothing out that direction. Nothing in the direction that he went. There's nothing. It's just wide open, nothing. Okay? So there's no reason for him to walk that direction, which is strange to me. I know. That's what I called her, that Dora. Molly the Explorer. Yes. Yeah, Cap, we're going to be doing that one here coming up. Probably maybe the next one, because I'm really looked into that most recently again. I followed it for years, the Black Dahlia thing, so it's coming. Probably the next one, now that you guys all agreed to.
South Pole Station is actually compiling this information. These are several articles that have all been put on the same page, and then they have a little bit of additional information at the bottom. But all the info that I've read to you from this website up to now actually came from a bulletin of the U.S. Antarctic Projects Office. That was volume 6, number 7 in April.
Now I'm going to get into the weird shit with you guys. Okay? And that's what I might show you after this if I can shut up long enough to finish this. Let me know when you're ready for the weird shit. Okay? So, I've told you guys a couple times now that you are not allowed to fly into Antarctica for any reason whatsoever. You're just not allowed to unless you're cleared with a U.S. government clearance, a military clearance. Okay, you guys know what I mean by that. I'm starting to wonder with this as I looked into it, if Carl saw something or heard something that maybe he shouldn't have. There have been research things going on in Antarctica for years, and I'm talking back into the 40s and 50s, even maybe before that, but military-based stuff, okay, and strange things. There's other theories about things that go on up there, which is another reason why you are just not allowed to show up there without this clearance, okay? So I started wondering, after I read into this, did he see something that day or hear something that maybe he shouldn't have? And he started walking towards it, and then, like I said, the track stopped. He disappears. Exactly. We all know that our government is our government, sure, but they will take us out if we're not supposed to know certain things. You know what I'm saying, okay? So I gotta wonder if this is possibly what happened here. Just saying.
April of 1965. So we're now going into a bit of a different article. This one is from the Antarctic Report. Throughout this period, there were intermittent storms with winds up to 45 knots and visibility reduced to 0 by heavy blowing snow, seasonal darkness, and overcast. At one point, the temperature dropped to -79 Fahrenheit, seriously interfering with the movement of men and vehicles. The station complement utilized the brief twilight at midday and the light of the full moon whenever possible to advance the search efforts. A memorial service for Carl Disch was held in his hometown of Monroe, Wisconsin on May 14th. Further search is planned for the return of daylight in the spring. And that's another thing about this mystery that just really kind of grabs me. So we're already hearing they had crazy challenges really trying to conduct this search, but despite all that, they really seem to do a lot, particularly in the first 3 days. From some of the articles I've read, I think they wound up searching just about a 35-mile area trying to find him in those first 3 days. But here we also hear that they have a further search planned for the return of daylight in the spring. So obviously they're considering a recovery effort, that his body is out there and it needs to be brought back. I cannot find any information about those further searches happening in the spring. I have trouble believing that they didn't happen. It seems like they were not fruitful, so no one really reported on them, which is just, once again, strange. I mean, I know that we're talking about conditions that are really hard for most of us to understand. I don't live in weather nearly that cold, but I would imagine that if it was worth noting here that, hey, when the spring comes around and we have regular daylight again, we're going to go out and try to search for him. And I would imagine that the daylight might help in terms of melting down some of the snow that might have covered him up if he did fall into, something or get covered up after falling down. But here we are, how many years later, and he still hasn't been found. No sign of him has been found. Now, I think we have to keep in mind, we're talking about a location where a continent that's the 5th largest continent, and you only have between 1,000 to 5,000 people living there, and they're living primarily in these bases. So what's the likelihood of him being found? This isn't like he went missing somewhere here in the US, and some hiker or someone riding a bike or someone doing something recreational is likely to bump into him. You have practically no chance of that out there. But it just really surprises me that he hasn't been found yet. So as I mentioned before, South Pole Station has added some of their own input and thoughts down below the 3 articles that they've put together on this page. One interesting anecdote must be added here. Told to me by a good pole friend long before he ever set foot on the ice. He had a summer job working as a telescope operator at Kitt Peak National Observatory. One of his co-workers who also worked nights was Frank Riesley, a really nice guy, but one of the most boring people my friend had ever met. And keep in mind that things can get mighty boring at an astronomical observatory on nights when it is cloudy. After my friend had been there for a few months, another operator told him that Frank had spent some time in Antarctica some years before, and that he'd literally bored a coworker to death. The story was that the guy, Carl, got so tired of Frank's monotone that he just gave up and walked out onto the plateau, never to be seen again. Frank never mentioned the incident or the ice at all to my friend. Now, I don't know. This certainly sounds like we're hitting urban legend territory, but do keep in mind we are talking about really weird dynamics that could be going on here. Very close quarters living. You're dealing with the same small group of people day after day after day. Could Carl really have gotten so annoyed that this was some way of him deciding to end his own life, that he was just going to pick a direction and walk off in that direction? I don't know. I don't know how feasible it is. Interesting anecdote certainly is. That's why I wanted to share it with you. But there's another point on here as well. Another anecdote told to the same friend said that supposedly the incident that triggered his disappearance was a card game during winter. Disch accused someone of not treating him correctly or even cheating, threw his cards down, and announced that he was going to visit his friends at Pole. I would assume that means at the actual South Pole. No one thought twice about his tantrum because he had done similar things before, but that was the last anyone saw of him. Once again, kind of sounds like urban legend territory to me. Here at an article from the Evening Sun, it's kind of interesting to me because we see what becomes the legend of this kind of get reported. The title of this article is "A U.S. Scientist and a Dog Disappear in the Mile-High Snows of Antarctica." A 26-year-old government scientist and a dog called Gus figure into one of the most mysterious and fascinating legends of the modern explorers of Antarctica. Both, apparently in good health, disappeared without a trace on the vast, mile-high white desert of snow and ice in Marie Byrd Land. Legend says that the man was one of the most brilliant scientists that ever visited the ice, yet he vanished. Search parties followed his tracks for 9 miles before the searchers had to stop on account of weather. The legend continues. For the next 3 days, they followed the tracks for 35 additional miles before the tracks vanished completely. Both sets of tracks, so the legend goes, headed directly toward the South Pole. So is there something to that last anecdote that we heard over at South Pole Station about a card game and him supposedly going to visit his friends at Pole? Here we have an article telling us that the tracks, at least as the legend goes, head directly to the South Pole, as if the man knew exactly where he wanted to go. Accompanying the searchers was the Byrd Station's pet husky, Gus. When the searchers reached the end of their endurance, Gus refused to turn back. He howled and raced into the storm, again straight toward the South Pole, more than 800 miles away. As Gus broke loose, the legend continues, the searchers saw strange lights and heard the sound of heavy engines in the distance, but neither the scientist nor Gus has ever been seen again. Now, that's another angle to this story. If you watch other YouTube videos on it, one of the theories kicking around there is, well, if you have snowy tracks and the snowy tracks just end, and you have people that saw strange lights and heard weird engine noises, got to be UFOs, right? UFO came down, picked them up, took them off somewhere. That's one of the theories that surrounds this case. I don't know how feasible that is because when it comes to the tracks disappearing in the snow, I think we've heard a reasonable explanation for that. The weather conditions at this time are severe. And the fact that those tracks could have been covered up by blizzard conditions, very easy to believe for me. So
That's great. If the tracks were covered up, where did he go? Where's his body at? There's the problem.
I think I would opt for believing that before I would believe that there was some type of UFO intervention going on here. But there is more, another myth that kicks around this story. Let's go ahead and jump over to sjhstrangetales.wordpress.com. And let me just tell you guys before I even read this, I cannot find source information that supports this next urban myth. But I think it's interesting. It does come up if you look into this case. If you look into Reddit threads on particular, this aspect is discussed as well. So I just wanted to include it here. An engaging urban myth, if you can have an urban myth in Antarctica, has also come out of the Disch case. In 1971, it is claimed, a message arrived at McMurdo Message Center via the AA2 weather circuit. The author of the message claimed to be Carl Disch. He said, "To the world I am dead. They believe that my body is but a pinpoint frozen here to the surface of this white continent. I say to you, I, Carl Disch, live. Do not for one moment think that it was a mistake. Everything was planned. They pushed me, tormented me, and bored me with their shallow lives." He goes on to claim that he was a genius and had been adopted by an elderly couple when he was very young. He wrote that he had seduced his dog away using tinned oysters soaked in barbecue sauce. He talks about the intense loneliness he now feels. The endless singing of the wind almost drives me mad. I begin to long for human companionship. It seems to be largely accepted that the message is an imaginative hoax. Now, I don't even know if it's that, because an imaginative hoax, I would assume, is someone actually broadcasting that somehow and it being picked up at McMurdo. I can't even confirm that. I cannot find the source for where this information is.
And that's true, but here's the thing. SRB, I thought about that too, like an animal, maybe a polar bear or something, grabbed him and drug him, but there would be blood at some point. It would they kill their before they drag them away. They're not going to drag them away fighting and flailing alive. Any predatory animal would have went for the throat or something to kill the guy to make him lay still. There was no blood. Because I thought of that too. Very good point. And then they would drag them away possibly. No blood. No nothing. There was no drag marks either that they could see. There's that. So I don't know. I don't know. In Antarctica, Cassie, if you weren't listening.
Coming from. As a matter of fact, I can only find a very small handful of websites that even reference this information. So is this complete fabrication? I'll leave it to you guys. I'm not feeling great about it because if I can't find where the information came from, that it's too easy to have been just created by someone. But can we find any answers to this? Is there anyone that has spoken in a reputable source that we can trust for trying to understand this case a little bit better? Thankfully, that last article that I read to you guys is written by the Associated Press about 1.5 years after the actual occurrence, and they did some good journalism. They actually went and tried to find someone that they could talk to that we could consider an expert in this case. And that person would be Ron Sefton, who is described as the scientific leader at Bird Station. I've heard a number of versions of it myself, embellished with weird stories about the possibilities of the scientist and the dog being snatched up by UFOs, or the possibility of their heading for a hidden lush valley. That's one that I didn't even hear in this. But it didn't quite happen that way. So what does Sefton say happened here? He said Disch and 3 other men walked over in the dimming twilight to the conjugate station of the Environmental Science Services Administration. I haven't heard the term conjugate station before, but kind of sounds like break room area to me. And that's what it sounds like when it's described what they were doing. The 4 men played cards for a while, drank a beer, and listened to a tape recorder. Now, that I think is an interesting point. Now we're talking about alcohol potentially being added to this equation. And I don't know, is it realistic that they really drank 1 beer while they were playing cards? Could it have been more? Maybe did he have 1 too many before he tried to head back? I don't know, but it's interesting that we now have some aspect of potentially putting together a scenario that's a little bit easier to understand than, a UFO came down and picked up him and the dog and took off. But let's continue here. Then, according to Sefton, Disch remarked that he had to get back to town early. He exchanged a few last-minute pleasantries with his 3 companions while donning his outdoor polar gear, then picked up the radio mic and informed Bird Station that he was on his way into Big Hole, the main entrance to the station. When Disch failed to check in at Bird within 45 minutes, a missing person alarm was flashed. And I'm glad they gave us that time frame, because I really didn't know what to expect for someone walking in those types of weather conditions. But if they kicked off the missing person alarm at 45 minutes, I bet that they were expecting him to be back at the station probably around 30, 40 minutes, something along those lines. 2 of the men at the ESSA station began working their way along a hand line marking the path to Bird. Should have been the hand line that Carl was actually using, while the 3rd one turned on the floodlights and waited, hoping that Disch would see the lights and return. So basically, the building that he's playing cards at, 1 guy stays there, lights are on, so that gives him a beacon to come back to. 2 of the guys go out on the line and start heading towards the bigger station. Then we have searchers at the bigger station making their way along the hand line towards the ESSA hut. So you literally have searchers coming at both sides of the hand line looking for Carl. You can see, I mean, just already they had really good processes and were trying to minimize the risk. I mean, they're out there within 45 minutes. They have searchers coming from both sides, plus people that are behind at both sites, kicking on lights, trying to wait for him. It's just really surprising to me that he doesn't find his way back. Neither party found any trace of Disch, and the hand line was unbroken. Tracked vehicles were brought out to the tunnel, and at last, Disch's footprints were found on the ice a few feet away from the hand line, heading southward. So it's kind of strange. If he was only a few feet away from the hand line at some point, why would he have lost it? If you know that you were just holding that line a few feet ago, and even if you've got your eyes completely covered, can't you figure out that I can only go a few feet, and if I don't find the line, I should turn around and go back a few feet more and see if I can find the line in that direction? I don't know the logistics of how he got lost, but admittedly, I have no idea about these weather conditions. We now know that there might have been some drinking involved here as well. It's really strange that they find his footprints only a few feet away from the line that was almost literally his lifeline to either getting back to the hut that he had come from or making it forward to the base. Sefton does say that the dog Gus was brought into the search, and they had a good reason for that, because huskies seem to be able to see much farther than men in blowing snow. If Disch had fallen and was lying in the snow, the husky would have seen him long before the searchers would, Sefton explained. Similarly, if he had fallen and was covered by drifting snow, the dog would have sighted the mound and rushed out to investigate it. That's the way huskies are. The tracked vehicles crisscrossed a wide area of the plateau, swinging in circles more than 35 miles in circumference during the futile hunt. Afterward, through the use of flag markers dropped along the way, it was calculated the tracks left by Disch extended about 9 miles before they vanished. So it's interesting. Even in some of the kind of urban legend versions of the story, we hear that they found tracks for 4 miles. Now we're hearing it was actually 9 miles. And this is from someone that was actually there at the time. So I think this is pretty reliable information. A long way to walk, particularly if you're going in the wrong direction. And once again, I'm just curious, are we talking a straight line for 9 miles? Because that could show that maybe there was some mental component going on here, that there was possibly.
But walking 9 miles in that kind of weather, that's crazy. Nonstop. And the stride never broke, guys. It was the same stride the whole time. That's weird to me.
A breakdown of some kind or something along those lines. Or was he meandering around for 9 miles trying to find his way back? Unfortunately, this article doesn't give us quite that level of detail. Now, what about the disappearance of Gus and the mysterious flashing lights and engine noises heard off in the distance? Sefton paused in his story, laughed, then added, "Sure, Gus disappeared. Again, nobody knows why, but the husky vanished some 4 months later, not on the night of the search for Disch, however." As for the flashing lights and engine sounds the searchers are supposed to have heard in the distance, Sefton said they were the lights and the engines of the various tracked vehicles being used in the search. Whatever happened to Carl Robert Disch is still unknown, but whatever it was has spawned a modern mystery and legend in Antarctica. The legend grows wilder and wilder as it is told and retold. Hopefully not in this.
I'm sorry to hear that, Chick Bait. I hope things work out for you. Hopefully it all works out well. My apologies you're going through that, hun.
Version of it, because I'm really trying to do my best to weed it back down to the truth. But this is one of those cases that is just very, very tough to understand. I think the simplest thing is he got lost in the weather conditions, but I'm struggling with how would he have gotten lost? You know, tracks found only a few feet from the line. It almost seems like he made a decision to walk off in a particular direction. And are those kind of urban legend stories that we heard before, do one of those really ring true in all this? It's strange because now that we know that there actually was a card game, the story about him being mad that someone was cheating or something along those lines had happened has a little more credence. There is a little more possibility to that. Would it have been enough for him to essentially want to end his own life in that way? I don't know, but we don't know what it's like living in those conditions. And I'm not just talking about the weather conditions. I'm talking about the quarters. I'm talking about a small group of people essentially being stuck together for a prolonged period of time. I know that I've heard about experiments they've done trying to get like astronauts ready to travel to Mars by putting them in small environments where they're stuck together for months at a time. And sometimes people literally have mental breakdowns, go crazy. There's a lot of strange stuff that happens. So could there be some social component to this where someone drove him mad? I don't know if it would really be a guy's monotone voice, but maybe, you never know. Or the gambling thing, or I mean the card game, possibly. Let's take a look at a Reddit thread just to get what their theories are. And this was posted by the Queen of Nothing, who did a nice synopsis on it. Of course, also included the message that supposedly came through in 1971. But the main theories that she covers here, that he got lost in the weather conditions. But some people question this because he was quite experienced in this line of work. You know, we heard from the stories, this is a route he would regularly take. It's a pretty safe method if you've got literally a cable you're holding on to and you're just going from one direction to the other. I think even if you were completely blindfolded, that should be a reasonable method of getting you from one place to the other, but it didn't seem to work in this case. He fell into a crevice somewhere. Certainly possible. Would the dog have been able to pick up a track of him? Maybe. I don't know enough about that area. I don't know enough about a dog's sense. I believe in wet conditions, I believe a dog's sense is actually better because the scent kind of travels on the moisture. We are talking about severely dry conditions, even though we're talking about freezing temperatures. So I don't know how that would affect a dog's smell. I would bet it probably doesn't work as well. So I don't know that Gus would have been able to pick up on that if he was in a crevice somewhere. But keep in mind, they were able to find his tracks, at least supposedly for up to 9 miles. If those were going in a direction where there was a hazard like that, I would like to think that they would have checked that hazard. You know, if they were coming up on, they know there's a cliff another mile that way, I would figure they probably would have made that part of their search plan and checked it out. Especially with, I mean, these are smart people watching each other's back. You could tell they had good processes by how quickly they mobilized and what they did in those processes. I'd be very surprised if they didn't check risky areas like that. He intentionally left. It's strange, but that is one that I just cannot shake. And it would really be solidified for me if I understood the pattern of the tracks that were found. I would love to see a map on this where they're actually showing, we found tracks here, we found tracks here, here's the direction they were going in, noting any significant turns or curves in those tracks. I think the tracks would give us the best understanding of his intent. If it is pretty much a dead straight line, if he is heading for the South Pole or whatever, that might show us his intent was to actually just walk off into the freezing cold. Alien abduction, I'll leave that to you guys, but I think what we heard from Sefton was pretty compelling information. You know, they had all kinds of vehicles and lights going on out there looking for this guy. Is it strange that you would hear engine noises and see lights when you have a search like that going on? Probably not. He was working for or abducted by the Soviet Union. Very interesting twist there, and not one that I really considered a whole lot. You know, with the type of work that he was doing, being in radio communication, possibly. I don't know how feasible it is, and obviously we don't have enough details to drive into it too much, but it is an interesting theory, and that's why I wanted to share it with you guys. So what happened around this case? I can't find anything. I cannot find any major updates. There's a huge run of stories when he originally goes missing. Like I said, hits national coverage right off the bat. And then when the Associated Press kicks out that story a year and a half later, there's another huge run of that story. And that's about all I can find on this case. However, Wikipedia has another entry related to him, Disch Promontory. Disch Promontory is a high ice-covered promontory, 6 nautical miles or 11 kilometers long, extending from the east side of Prince Andrew Plateau, Queen Elizabeth Range. It was named by the Advisory Committee on Antarctic Names for Carl R. Disch, a United States Antarctic Research Program ionospheric physicist who was lost at Byrd Station May 8th, 1965. And I had to look it up because I don't know what a promontory is. It is a raised mass of land that projects into a lowland. I think it's really nice that they decided to honor him in that way. I'm just stuck with a big question of what the heck happened in this case. Let's talk about that in the comments below. Do you guys think it's one of the theories that we covered? Do you think it's something else? Let's chat about that in the comments. Also, in the description box below will be all the links that we went through for today's episode, except for some.
Okay, so I'm going to move to this next one now. 1 second here. Hold on. The way these stories were put out about him, a lot of them have the same stuff, like same bits of information, and then some of them have some of the same stuff, and then some other stuff that they don't, if that makes any sense to you guys. Hang on here. All right, I'm gonna see if this one gives you guys any more. I can't remember if it did or it didn't because I went through a few of them. Thank you so much, SRB. To add to what we've heard already to this.
On May 8, 1965, Carl Robert Disch, a National Bureau of Standards scientist working in Antarctica, stepped out of the radio noise building he worked at and seemingly disappeared off the face of the Earth. It began at around 0915. 26-year-old Carl Robert Disch, an ionospheric physicist assigned to the bird station in Antarctica investigating VLF radio noises, put out a call to his fellow scientists that he was leaving his substation for the main station complex, situated a little over a mile away. Even in a storm, it was a somewhat routine trip that Disch had made over 24 times since arriving at the station. Helping him along was a hand line that ran from the meteorology building at the main station to the ladder at the base of the radio noise building where he worked. The temperature was a brutal 45 degrees below zero with winds of 25 to 30 knots. Carl braced himself for the short trip and stepped out into the night. Some 45 minutes later, scientists stationed at the main station began to wonder why Disch hadn't yet arrived, and a team quickly departed to search the area of the hand line. At 11:30, searchers managed to pick up his trail that led west. They would follow his footprints for about 4 miles, which led curiously towards the southwest end of the runway. The runway was used for flying in supplies to the station. After that, the tracks just seemed to vanish. The search party would return to the station briefly to refuel and then head back out. They spent 3 more hours trying to pick up the trail, but to no avail. At 18:15, they returned to the station to warm up. At 1900, another search party was sent out to investigate the area of the supply line and dump. No tracks were found. At 1950, everybody at the station gathered and made a human chain search from the dump to the end of the runway. Again, they found nothing. Adding to that, flares were fired every half hour from the Aurora Tower, and floodlights were blasted out over the station. Visibility conditions eventually prevented the flares from being useful, and they were discontinued.
That's a good point, SRB. Anybody working in this atmosphere, in this area type stuff, like I can imagine anybody having a mental break. Like I couldn't do it. That's crazy. This is all you see for months at a time. No way. So yeah, very possible. Very possible.
Another vehicle search party was launched at 1800 hours on May 9th. It covered a 1 mile wide by 9 mile long area running south of the runway. One of the searchers noted that, quote, there was no noticeable shortening of stride in his tracks, unquote. At 0740 on May 10th, an 8-man search party equipped with 2 vehicles, a sled-mounted hut, and sufficient fuel and provisions to last a week departed the station on the southerly track. It searched to about 12 miles south of the station, making perpendicular sweeps to the east and west and marking the trail with flags. Sadly, no tracks were ever found. On May 12th, they searched the northeast and southeast sectors of Old Bird Station, some 6 miles away, and repeated attempts were made to reach the Longwire site, which was some 11 miles to the northwest, even though that direction was contrary to the direction of the footprints, and the searchers doubted Disch would have made it there anyway. Visibility was good, but darkness severely limited their range of vision. The next 2 days' visibility was so poor due to blowing snow and fog that no search was possible. The search was eventually called off on May 14. In the end, more than 35 miles of area around the hut was covered in those 5 days, to no avail. When he left the substation, Disch was fully clothed with customary Antarctic clothing, large jacket, boots, gloves, hat, etc. The temperature during the search was about minus 44 degrees Fahrenheit, with intermittent storms with winds up to 45 knots and visibility reduced to zero by heavy blowing snow, seasonal darkness, and overcast. At one point, the temperature dropped to minus 79 Fahrenheit, seriously interfering with the movement of men and the vehicles. The station complement utilized the brief twilight at midday and the light of the full moon whenever possible to advance the search efforts. While it's possible that Disch merely stepped out of his substation and got lost in a blizzard and nothing more, there are many curious aspects to the story that some Fortean researchers have made note of. In his book, Our Haunted Planet.
The thing is, though, is that they claimed it there. We didn't hear this before, but they searched 40 34 miles around, okay, which is quite a bit around that whole area. All the substations out and about, they searched out around 34 miles, guys, and there's nothing there besides that there are extra little stations and stuff, and that's crazy. And there was nothing, no body, no crevices, cracks that they've talked about, anything. So I don't know. I guess we'll hear what this next part is.
The late John Keel wrote of some of the more mysterious elements to the vanishing of Carl Robert Disch, including a curious quote that appeared in the Baltimore Sun regarding the huskies used in the search. Speaking to William J. Perkinson, a writer at the Sun, Ron Sefton, bird station leader, said, quote, "If Disch had fallen and was lying in the snow, the huskies would have seen him long before the searchers did. Similarly, if he had fallen and was covered by drifting snow, the dogs would have discovered the mound and rushed to investigate it. That's just the way huskies are," unquote.
And that's the thing, is they took the dogs out while they were searching too, and they scented the dogs for this, and that's what they were used for out there. And the dogs never found him. So if he'd have been buried under snow, like he said, they'd have ran up to that to search it. Nothing there. It's crazy.
Quote, "Anyone familiar with the work of David Paulides will be aware of the many times he cites cases in which search and rescue dogs either will not or are simply unable to track those who have gone missing, often uncharacteristically. Interestingly, not long after Disch disappeared, his own dog, a husky named Gus, also went missing. If Disch was merely on foot, how is it possible that he could have walked so far as to not be found by man or animal alike?" Even more curious was the reports by some of the searchers of the odd things they encountered during that 5-day search, including mysterious lights in the sky and weird noises. Not unlike a loud generator or an engine that could be heard off in the distance, the thoroughly creeped out searchers were never able to get close enough to locate a source for either the lights or the sounds. Antarctica is mostly uninhabited, except for some international scientists who work closely with one another. It's very unlikely that the lights and sounds the scientists encountered were merely other people hanging around. Given that during much of the search, the area was in the grip of a blizzard, it makes it even more unlikely. That said, if not people, then who? Or rather, what? Could these strange lights and sounds ultimately be the reason for why Disch never made it to the main station? Disch was no spring chicken. He was an experienced researcher. He had made the trip to the main station over 25 times in the worst conditions. It seems unlikely that he would simply disregard the hand line, and to be sure, the report makes it clear that after stepping out of the substation, he began heading west towards the end of the runway, not south in the direction of the main station complex. Why would he do this? Has something gotten his attention, an odd noise, or a light perhaps? Something hovering over or maybe landed on the runway? Had Disch's want to investigate lead him to foregoing common sense? One of the searchers noted that there was no noticeable shortening of stride in these tracks, as if Disch was walking towards something with a purpose and not stumbling around blindly. If he had gotten lost, why had he not merely followed his tracks back? Obviously, they were visible enough that the searchers were able to track him for up to 4 miles. Granted, while this is merely speculation, one has to wonder what would cause Disch to disregard his own safety, wander away from his predetermined destination, and out into no man's land. It simply makes no sense.
Okay, hold on. 1 minute. I have all these smaller stories on this too, just to give you guys, just in case there's something that wasn't put into one of the other ones.
On the morning of the 8th of May 1965, a man by the name of Carl Robert Disch, working at Byrd Station in Antarctica, mysteriously disappeared. Search parties were hastily assembled, but could find no trace of him, except for a single set of footprints in the snow. And desolately beautiful, Antarctica sits as a stark reminder to all mankind that nature does indeed conquer all, for she is far too formidable a force in this part of the world for humans to contend with. It is the only significant landmass on Earth that harbours no permanent inhabitants, and remarkably, one that remained unexplored until little over 100 years ago. Given the brutal conditions there, it is not difficult to understand why. It is the coldest, windiest, and bizarrely, the driest continent on the planet. Despite the fact that Antarctica is almost perpetually covered in snow, it receives very little rain or snowfall, and is in fact classed as a desert. The snow that does exist there has built up over hundreds of years, as it is far too cold to ever melt. For this reason, Antarctica has claimed dozens of lives, and devastated many more. Those who have visited this strange region often have polarizing views regarding its allure. Some appreciate the isolation, others are driven mad by it. One's existence there seems to fluctuate between endless and sometimes insufferable silence and the deafening sounds of colliding icebergs and howling blizzards. Save for some stunning mountain ranges and glaciers, the landscape is often featureless. No trees or permanent wildlife exists in this part of the world, resulting in vast expanses of brilliant white snow. It is no wonder that Antarctica is perceived as either a place of serene calm and beauty, or a harsh and remote cabin fever-inducing nightmare. Over the past century, many dark tales have emerged from this unique continent, from infamous disappearances, murders, and even the frenzied killing of pets, to stories regarding pyramids under the ice and the possibility of ancient cities buried beneath the permafrost. It is a place of many mysteries it seems unwilling to surrender. One such haunting tale, which has endured for more than 50 years, occurred on a cold, dark morning back in 1965. A year previous to this, 26-year-old Carl Robert Disch, a young man from Monroe, Wisconsin, had joined the staff at Boulder Laboratories, working as an ionospheric physicist. As part of his role, he was asked to join a research team in Antarctica, a daunting prospect to say the least, but he agreed, and soon found himself assigned to Byrd Station, situated almost 600 miles from the geographic South Pole. Over the next 6 months, he would spend most of his time working in the Central Radio Propagation Laboratory, and his job required him to work long hours at the Radio Noise Building, a small hut strategically positioned just over a mile northwest of the main complex. Despite the distance, the two buildings were connected by a handline, a length of rope which helped guide the researchers during harsh weather or when visibility was poor. Disch himself had made this journey dozens of times, so was familiar with the terrain and the navigational processes involved. However, on the morning of the 8th of May 1965, he would set out from the Radio Noise Building for the very last time and walk off into the wilderness, never to be seen again. Disch.
Yeah, JC, that was the first story we covered today, was Jason Jolkowski out of Omaha, which I knew was your area, but I I know you're from Nebraska, so I figured you might know that. But we're talking about Robert Disch now. But yeah, the Jason Jolkowski one is definitely strange too, because there's absolutely nothing to lead to him whatsoever. So thank you for joining.
Left the small hut at 9:15 a.m. during nautical twilight, heading for the main complex. The winds were up, but he was fully attired in Antarctic clothing, which in theory would have provided adequate protection from the freezing cold temperatures, which had dropped as low as -44 degrees Fahrenheit. The trek should have taken him no longer than half an hour. Nevertheless, when Disch had still not reached his destination by 10 a.m., his colleagues became sufficiently concerned to assemble a vehicle search party and deploy it along his intended route. They found no sign of him, however. Further investigation revealed a set of footprints over by the radio noise building. These were discovered at 11:30 and began at the bottom of the ladder attached to the hut. But rather than leading south along the handline, as they would have expected, they headed west towards the skiway, a landing area where supplies were flown in. Colleagues followed his trail downwind for a distance of approximately 4 miles towards the southwest corner of the station's outer perimeter, at which point the search party needed to return to base to refuel. At the time, his co-workers noted how his tracks appeared purposeful, with consistent long paces, as opposed to an uncertain, stop-start kind of progression. This suggested that wherever Disch was heading, he was moving with intent, as opposed to the apprehension one might expect if lost or confused. Once the vehicles had been refueled, the team moved back out to the corner of the skiway. Unfortunately, a 3-hour search of the area yielded nothing, as by this time, the heavy gales had blown snow over the rest of the tracks, causing them to disappear. Not only this, but the blustering 30-knot winds had also covered the tracks of the search party, making a safe return extremely difficult. They eventually made it back to base at 6:15 p.m. that evening, and by 7 p.m., an extensive search of the supply line, the emergency Jamesway and fuel dump was undertaken, all to no avail. An hour or so later, his colleagues formed a human chain in order to search the route leading from the base, all the way down to the skiway where his tracks had disappeared. Despite difficult weather conditions and limited visibility, floodlights were lit over the station and flares were launched every 30 minutes, until a point when visibility became so poor that these measures were deemed ineffective. The following day, a third vehicle search party was assembled, and this covered the 1 mile wide by 9 mile long area leading from the base to the skiway and beyond. Despite finding occasional unblemished tracks moving in a southwesterly direction, they once again abruptly disappeared approximately 4 miles southwest of the radio noise building. On the 10th of May, 2 days after the disappearance, an extensive search began at 7:40 a.m. This consisted of an 8-man party, 2 vehicles, a Jamesway, provisions and fuel. The search began at the main complex, moving in a southerly direction and making perpendicular sweeps to the east and west. The search party marked their progress with flags and continued for 12 miles beyond the perimeter of the station, but nothing was found. On the 12th, the northeast and southeast sectors of Bird Station were searched. The weather was favourable, but darkness severely hampered their visual range. Over the next 2 days, visibility worsened to the point that due to the harsh winds and fog, no search was possible. By the 14th, 35 square miles of area had been covered, but despite this extensive search, Carl Robert Disch was never seen again. In the following weeks, on account of the time he had been missing, combined with the brutal weather conditions he would have been exposed to, he was presumed dead. A memorial service was held by friends and family back in his hometown of Monroe, and another by his colleagues at Bird, marking the beginning of a mystery which for well over 50 years has tragically endured without a sense of closure, as it's not so easy to explain. The questions that were asked back then are still being asked today. Why did Disch deviate from his usual route? Was it a mistake on his part, or was it intentional? And how did a physically fit, experienced and intelligent individual seem to vanish without trace? A number of theories have evolved over time in an attempt to explain what might have happened, some reasonably straightforward, and others requiring more of an open mind. But one thing all these supposed explanations have in common is that not one of them is without its flaws. Perhaps the most popular theory regarding Disch's disappearance is the previously mentioned weather conditions. It is conceivable that when he left the radio noise building, a combination of the blizzard, poor visibility, and the monotonous white landscape caused him to lose his sense of direction and wander off to the west instead of south towards the main complex. Once he had ventured a short distance, it would have been very difficult to regain his bearings. However, Disch had made this short journey more than 24 times before. Given his experience, it is unlikely that he would miss the handline and deviate so far off his route. After descending the ladder attached to the radio noise building, the rope would have been right there in front of him. Even despite the low visibility, there is no way he could have missed it. Furthermore, if he had simply lost his way, why would he have continued to walk in a straight line for at least 4 miles? Why would his tracks not have indicated a more uncertain behavior? And could he not have used those tracks to retrace his steps back to the radio noise building? After all, if the footprints were still visible when the search party found them, he certainly should have been able to see them and follow them. This begs the question then, was his straying off the beaten track intentional? An alternate explanation to Disch's disappearance suggests that he might have suffered a mental breakdown. It is rumoured that he had been mistreated or even cheated during a card game just moments before he left. He apparently threw his cards down onto the table and told his colleague that he was going to visit his friends at the pole. A similar anecdote references the fact that Disch was part of a 2-man team and that his co-worker was an incredibly boring individual whose monotonous voice could have driven a man insane over a long enough period of time. Considering how tedious certain shifts might be in this line of work, it is not hard to imagine the situation being compounded by spending days on end with...
Well, it was nonstop for 6 months. Okay? 6 months, they said, working long hours in that little hut, staying with it. I mean, there's nothing else to do in there. Nothing around you. I can imagine people breaking like on a regular basis here. So...
someone you find insufferably dull. It is considered that, much like the example of the aforementioned card game, Disch had simply had enough, left the building, and walked away to clear his head. But surely, a man of his experience would have known that pursuing such an action would have been suicide considering the hostile environment, unless things had really gotten out of hand and he set off that morning with no intention of returning. But then why suicide? Whilst it is understandable that trivial issues might get blown out of proportion in such isolated conditions, it is difficult to understand why someone like Disch would react in this way. He was a successful young man with his whole life ahead of him, after all. In either case, the lack of a body is problematic, as you would expect to find at least something if either scenario was true, unless of course he fell into a deep crevice, which is entirely possible, given that they are a common feature across the Antarctic landscape. But perhaps there could be other...
No, you're a sweetheart, Peggy. We all know that. So you can pretend to be a bad person, but we know better.
reasons for this. Unsurprisingly, theories have also been put forward which suggest a supernatural element. Researchers have long contested the fact that the footprints seem to come to an abrupt stop in the middle of nowhere. Those skeptical of such notions attest that further footprints had been covered over with fresh snow, whilst those more inclined to look for otherworldly explanations argue that the tracks just stopped, as though Disch had simply vanished or was lifted into the air. Whilst the former is more plausible, it was allegedly reported by several people involved in the search that unusual lights and noises were seen and heard in the vicinity, both before and after Disch's disappearance, though the source of this activity was never determined. Was he distracted as he exited the radio noise building, and did he follow someone or something that might have caught his attention? Perhaps he saw these unusual lights over the skiway and thought he was looking at an unscheduled supply drop. If this was the case, however, an unscheduled supply drop would have been a big deal, and he surely would have reported this activity before setting off. Furthermore, we could not find any official source regarding reports of this strange phenomena, which leads us to believe these details could be embellishments that have been added over time. Another unusual element to this story is that Gus, Disch's husky, went missing a few days later. It is theorized that he went looking for his master, but this small detail would later become linked to one of the more bizarre explanations surrounding this case. It is claimed that in 1971, a message arrived at a research center in the Antarctic via the AA2 weather circuit. The author claimed to be none other than Carl Robert Disch, and the communication read, "To the world I am dead. They believe that my body is but a pinpoint, frozen here to the surface of this white continent. I say to you, I, Carl Disch, live. Do not for one moment think that it was a mistake. Everything was planned. They pushed me, tormented me, and bored me with their shallow lives." He went on to say that he had enticed his dog away by using tinned oysters soaked in barbecue sauce, and talked about the intense loneliness he now felt. "The endless singing of the wind almost drives me mad. I begin to long for human companionship." Whilst this is intriguing to say the least, it would be almost impossible for anyone to survive so long in such brutal conditions, especially being as poorly equipped as he had been. As a result, it is generally accepted that this message was a hoax. One final possibility that is rarely considered is that Disch may have defected to the Soviet Union, or at least may have been abducted by them. As far-fetched as this may sound, there is in fact a story regarding a British Royal Navy commander attached to a survey group in Antarctica who disappeared in very similar circumstances during the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. It turned out that this man had secretly been working for the Soviets, and that they picked him up just before his cover was about to be blown. Disch did go missing during the height of the Cold War after all, and as a specialist in his field, he would have been a valuable and therefore attractive asset to either side. This could also explain the strange lights and weird noises, if indeed those things did occur. The problem with this theory, however, is the locality of Bird Station. It was roughly 400 miles from the nearest coastline, and that is a massive distance to cover during an Antarctic winter. So unless his rescuers, or abductors, had a secret base nearby, this explanation is also unlikely. Despite the assortment of theories, it seems that not one of them is sufficiently watertight to draw a definite conclusion. What makes this case so intriguing is the contrast between the minimal amount of information available on the disappearance and the vast range of possible explanations put forward, despite none of those explanations standing up to intense scrutiny. Given the evidence, it seems most likely that Carl Robert Disch knowingly committed suicide. A combination of the secluded conditions, dealing with the same individuals day in, day out, the unbearable weather and depressing lack of daylight, may have all conspired together to push this young man over the edge. Antarctica is a strange place, which does strange things to people, and he would not be the first, and certainly not the last person to succumb to its dark gravitas. And even though his colleagues reported that he seemed fine within himself, the unfortunate truth is that some individuals are just too good at hiding how they really feel. Of course, we cannot say that this is what happened with any certainty. The more time that passes, the more the details seem to fade, not unlike a certain set of footprints. Perhaps there is something poetic in that. This beautifully desolate continent certainly has a way of keeping its secrets. May Carl Robert Disch be at peace, wherever he is.
So that's Carl Robert Disch. See if I can pull this up. Let's see here. Just to give you guys a look into one second here. Hold on. This is just to show you like real photographs of this area and bird station and stuff like that, so that you guys can kind of see what it's all about out up there. It is beyond bizarre, in my opinion. Like I said, it reminds me of some X-Files stuff. So this is like bird station in Antarctica. Okay, just so everybody knows. Yeah, and this place was put together, as it says, Ohio University, Ohio State. So
this is going to be strictly a slideshow, essentially no science. And I think maybe the one just 1,000 feet, 1,500 meters, and the landscape is 360 degrees of flat snow. So this is back in the day of...
this is just to show how desolate and like who goes there, who doesn't, how you get in and out, just all of that kind of stuff, so everybody can kind of understand what it's really like there.
Propeller airplanes and military logistics for the program. So we boarded military transport airplanes at Davisville in Rhode Island, and McMurdo landed on here. And eventually, we actually saw the ice shelf. This is just as we were coming in after a 10-hour flight or so from Christchurch. And here is my first glimpse of Antarctica itself out of the window on the right side of the airplane, Transantarctic Mountains. Here we are on the runway at McMurdo Station. Mount Erebus was an active volcano, the only active volcano.
We just had a downpour, SRB. I mean, a downpour. I think we had it before you. And the wind was blowing and it was raining hard. So you might be getting what we just had. Now the sun's back out. It's crazy.
In Antarctica, in the background, the airplane there is an Air Force C-124 cargo airplane. They were used to November 1959. Observation Hill is there in the background.
See, there's nothing here, you guys. Nothing. And this is probably the warmer months here, truly. Anyway, but you don't see anything anywhere around here. There's no like cities or nothing. It's just like research facilities. That's it. Nothing else.
This Main Street, McMurdo. This is the Chapel of the Snows. And again, well, won't bother with that. At that time, there were actually still dogs used for, in fact, in the American program, only for amusement. The New Zealanders and the Brits and the Australians actually still use a dog for transport. A ship which was used as a fuel tank for the station. And we went to the hut of the Scott, 1912 Scott base, the New Zealand station, which is right. Never saw a penguin all the time I was in the Antarctic until perhaps 10 years later when I, wintered over at Bird Station, and here are 2, 4, 6 of the scientists. Back to the south and 120 west, the distance is actually about 3/4 of a mile north of 80 South. And the station had been there when we came. The station was first occupied in the summer of 56, 57. And here we have conscripted volunteers clearing off the accumulated snow and some construction to buildings to be set up at the station, prefabricated. Very graphic. You can see this is the level of the floor. The melter was just a box. Mail. But this airplane was coming in to land and it was very bad weather. They got a little lower than they thought they were. Fortunately, no one was, I think it was New Year's actually. He would connect one of the larger and
Yeah, I'm trying to. There was a specific thing they were showing. This is that station that he was at, that Bird Station, and they were showing certain things that I wanted to show you guys. I just can't imagine how anybody could survive doing what they do for the periods of time that they do it for years at a time, and they don't have any interaction with anything other than themselves. It's all scientific shit. You know, there's anything else going on, and it's not really showing me. But that's it. Look around. There's nothing around anywhere. That's it. I mean, it's crazy. There was another video too, but I just was going to show some of the area of what it looks like, so you guys can kind of get an idea as to what they went through out there. And there's rumors of things that have been hiding out that are hidden in Antarctica too. So take it for what it is. You know, it's up to you guys. Here, I'll show you this one thing here too, real quick. Gives a little more insight into some of the spooky side to it, I guess you could say. Paranormal. I don't know what the hell you want to call it. It's weird.
When a man with a Medal of Honor, Navy Cross, 2-time Navy Distinguished Service Medal, 2-time Legion of Merit Medal, and a Distinguished Flying Cross Congressional Gold Medal tells you that 1 doesn't equal 1, you drop everything you are doing and listen. In the case of this man, he tells us that Antarctica isn't what we know it as.
You're okay,
If
Peggy.
anything, Antarctica is a thriving continent with people living in it for generations. If he is right, that means everything our government has ever said was a lie. I know they do lie, but this lie would be the ruler of all lies. And then you start to realize that the lies are not the problem, but what they are covering up in Antarctica that made them lie in the first place. Admiral Richard E. Byrd was one of the most decorated officers in the U.S. Navy. He is the only person in history to have 3 ticker tape parades in New York City, one in 1926, 1927, and 1930, given in his honor. He was also one of only 4 American military officers in history entitled to wear a medal with his own image on it. When it comes to accomplishments, authenticity, and awards, there is no one like Richard E. Byrd. But what Byrd was mostly known for was his expedition. He explored places no one wanted to go. You see, Byrd always wanted to be the first in everything. It was like an obsession for him, which could be why he had so many first awards tagged to him, like being the first and youngest admiral at just the age of 41. His obsession with being the first is why he had no problem leading the expedition to Antarctica. From the early 1900s to the early 2000s, he led 5 different trips to the Antarctic. The last 3 of these trips were paid for by the US government, while the first 2 were from his pocket and some believers. Byrd's first trip to the Antarctic took place in 1928, with 2 ships and 3 airplanes. Throughout the summer, trips were made to take pictures and study the rocks, and radio contact with the outside world was kept at all times. Then, during the summer of 1933 and 1934, Byrd went on his second trip and worked alone for 5 months at what was known as an advance base, which was a meteorological station. It was during this expedition that he almost died from carbon monoxide poisoning from a stove that didn't have enough airflow. While all these were great and useful expeditions, those were not the expeditions that people talked about. The first 2 were free of any sort of controversies, but the third one wasn't, and weirdly enough, this was when the government started getting involved with Byrd's expedition. From 1946 to 1947, Byrd led an expedition called Operation High Jump, which set up a research base on the Ross Ice Shelf called Little America for 4.
Antarctica, a composite portrait of a continent which has challenged man since first he could sail beyond the limits of his horizon.
The Antarctic continent.
World War II had shown that U.S. ships and aircraft were not up to cold weather. Ships that were operating in the Arctic Sea often froze up, and I mean that literally. Planes coming from Greenland and even Iceland crashed just because of the weather. So in response to that, the U.S. came up with a set of steps to make it easier to use these ships and planes under Arctic conditions. At the same time, the U.S. wanted to see if this could be done from a long distance. Operation High Jump would be created to test and find answers to these questions. A naval task force would go to Antarctica as part of a drill to see how well the equipment stood out against the cold. Then, also, map out a big part of it to either claim the land or to satisfy Pentagon's curiosity. And the best person for this kind of job was the fearless and experienced Admiral Byrd. The operation went so well that it got terminated early. It was because of this mission that ships and planes would be winterized in the years after High Jump so that they could go to war with the Soviets again if one broke out. The most well-known example is how nuclear-capable B-29 bombers were made ready for winter so they could fly from Alaska. All what I've told you so far was the government version of the story, but here is where people started to ask questions. If it was just a drill, why are you going with 14 ships, 33 aircraft, and about 4,700 men armed to the teeth? There were 2 destroyers tankers, 2 heavily armed seaplanes, and an attack submarine all fully stocked with the best weapons in the entire Navy. That was really a lot of equipment and personnel for just a drill. Apparently, they needed that number to fight the Nazis in Antarctica. You see, in December 1938, Hitler already knew he was about to start a war, so he was putting things in order and getting help from every aspect, including the ones that people would call you crazy for thinking about it. Imagine being on the brink of war and then sending your troops to go find mysterious ancient artifacts that could be used in your favor. Sounds stupid, right? But to Hitler, it wasn't. Anything that could help him was explored. So he signed off on multiple expeditions. One of these expeditions launched on December 17, 1938, and the SAS Schwabenland was sent on a secret mission to Antarctica. On board were scientists, engineers, and also members of the Thule Society, which was a German occultist group. The Thule Society had a lot of beliefs, and most of those beliefs were strongly rooted in racism, hurting anyone who was different than them, especially the Jews. But one belief they had was that a highly advanced race of human-like beings called Aryans existed somewhere deep inside the Earth, and the entrance to Aryan's world was at the South Pole. So the classified mission given by Hitler to the SS Schwabenland was to find a location for a secret underground base and make contact with the Aryans living in the hollow Earth. Once contact was made, they were to negotiate for access to their technology so that they could use it in the upcoming war. The ship reached the Antarctic coast a month later, And for the next couple of weeks, they mapped hundreds of thousands of square miles of the continent. About 150 miles inland, aerial reconnaissance found what is described as an Arctic oasis, an area of about 300 square miles. This area was free of ice, filled with warm water, and even contained plant life, which shouldn't be. The ocean beneath the oasis was a geothermal vent that kept the area relatively warm. This was the ideal place for a base, especially for U-boats. This is where the Nazis would establish the infamous underground facility known as Base 211. Over the course of World War II, Base 211 became a massive complex as large as a small city. Noticing what was happening, the American government was getting worried about this development happening in Antarctica. What's that saying again? Keep your friends close, your enemies closer. And America was going to do that with Operation High Jump. Now, Operation High Jump was supposed to last 6 to 8 months. But remember, I said the mission was cut short because it was successful. The mission lasted just 40 days, and almost immediately everyone was evacuated and the operation terminated. The Navy said it was because winter was coming early and the weather was getting worse, but in Antarctica, February was the height of summer. Their statement didn't correlate with the facts. Remember that they went there in the first place to test their stuff against the cold. If what they said was true, shouldn't the weather be perfect for their test? This was when the conspiracy theories started coming out. Did something happen in Antarctica that made the massive Navy group return to the United States? Probably to reassess and regroup. And what were they regrouping for? For a long time, nobody knew, but all that changed when a diary was found. On one of his routine flights, Admiral Byrd was flying over the South Pole while speaking with the American public over live radio being relayed by the Navy to listeners. This was like watching your favorite influencer talk or share their experiences. However, during the broadcast, Byrd was cut off from his radio monologue for nearly 3 hours. No one could hear him, not even the Navy. This was a problem. No one knew where Byrd was or could communicate with him. It was after Byrd released his diary that we were able to see what happened in those 3 missing hours.
We are crossing over the small mountain range and still proceeding northward as best as can be ascertained. Beyond the mountain range is what appears to be a valley with a small river or stream running through the center portion. There should be no green valley below. Something is definitely wrong and abnormal here. We should be over ice and snow. To the port side are great forests growing on the mountain slopes. Our navigation instruments are still spinning. The gyroscope is oscillating back and forth.
Byrd had stumbled on a place he couldn't explain. Antarctica is one of the coldest places on Earth. Warmth and green, fleshy plantations shouldn't exist. To even sound more confusing, Byrd talks about not seeing the sun anymore, which was worrying for him because he was having problems with his navigation system, so he had to resort to using the sun for directions, and now he can't find the sun.
The light here seems different. I cannot see the sun anymore. We make another left turn and we spot what seems to be a large animal of some kind below us. It appears to be an elephant. No, it looks more like a mammoth. This is incredible. Yet, there it is. Decrease altitude to 1,000 feet and take binoculars to better examine the animal. It is confirmed. It is definitely a mammoth-like animal. Report this to base camp.
He tried to radio in, but the radio was not working, and that's when he saw it.
Ahead, we spot what seems to be a city. This is impossible. The aircraft seems light and oddly buoyant. The controls refuse to respond. My God! Off our port and starboard wings are a strange type of aircraft. They are closing rapidly alongside. They are disc-shaped and have a radiant quality to them. They are close enough now to see the markings on them. It is a type of swastika. This is fantastic.
Now even I don't know what he saw. Was it an alien? Was it an ancient civilization? Was it actually the Aryans the Germans were looking for? What was it? Byrd's radio finally starts to work, and a voice comes through speaking English with a Nordic or Germanic accent. The voice tells Byrd that they would help him land, and he shouldn't worry, that he's in good hands. This was during World War II, so hearing anyone talk with a German accent about you trusting them was like trusting the devil for a blessing. But Byrd couldn't do anything or run away. The engines on his plane stopped working and were under some strange control. It was driving itself and even landed safely, all by itself.
Several men are approaching on foot toward our aircraft. They are tall with blonde hair. In the distance is a large shimmering city, pulsating with rainbow hues of color. I do not know what is going to happen now, but I see no signs of weapons on those approaching. I hear now a voice ordering me by name to open the cargo door. I comply. End log.
Bird was taken from the aircraft and boarded on a small platform-like conveyance with no wheels and into the city. Bird was in awe of what he saw. A city made of crystal materials that made it very beautiful. He was then taken into a large building, and it was there he met the one known as the Master.
I see a man with delicate features and with the etching of years upon his face. He is seated at a long table. He motions me to sit down in one of the chairs. After I am seated, he places his fingertips together and smiles. He speaks softly again and conveys the following. We have let you enter here because you are of noble character and well known on the surface world, Admiral. Surface world, I half gasp under my breath. Yes, the Master replies with a smile. You are in the domain of the Ariani, the inner world of the Earth.
Bird was shocked. If what the Master just said is true, that means everything we've ever known about our universe and Earth is wrong. Let me take a moment to explain why this is mind-blowing. There is a theory known as the Hollow Earth theory. Some people heavily believe that there was and probably is an opening to the center of the Earth. In the 1690s, English astronomer Edmund Halley told the Royal Society of London that he thought the Earth was made up of stacked spherical shells that spun in different directions around a central core. Halley thought that the space between the shells could have conditions that supported life. In the 1810s, American officer John Cleves Sims added to Halley's idea by saying that those spheres could be reached through holes in both the North and South Poles. Some believers say that this place is home to aliens, Vikings, ancient cultures, and even Nazis that were trying to escape the Allies. They also claim that Adam and Eve from the Bible were banished from the inside of the Earth to the outside, and the lost tribes of Israel migrated from the outside to the inside. And of course, you don't know of this because it has been debunked by numerous governments, but if what Bird said and stumbled upon is true, then that means we've all lived a lie. The Master told Bird that he meant him no harm, but he wanted to talk to him because Bird was a respectable person whose opinion matters in the surface world, which was true. The Master then tells Bird the reason for intercepting Bird's plane was to give him a message to tell the surface world about the war going on. The atomic bombs over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan were a cause for worry for them. The world had not seen something like that before. It was alarming for them that they had to risk exposure and send their flying ships to investigate what had happened.
See, and it makes me wonder is if all these back in the 60s and the 70s, when they were going to these research facilities in Antarctica, what were they researching truly there? What were they doing there? And hearing that there were what sounded like mechanical engine noises and lights and stuff off in the distance, that when they were looking for him, was this stuff there? You know what I mean? Did these types of things exist? Because according to Admiral Byrd, they did see and have these types of things there. All these things came out of like a journal that he wrote in that's what's being read from now, supposedly. So, and I think Germany was there because it had been Russia, Germany, and a few other countries were there, and they had their own research facilities there. So yeah, it's kind of wild.
Surprisingly, this tallies the numerous accounts of eyewitnesses of UFOs that were recorded during that period. And weirdly enough, they are mostly seen in nuclear plants that could be used for nuclear warfare, in which later, the plants will usually report that something just stopped working or the plant was sabotaged, like in the case of the Solway Firth spacemen. This is a weird thing to think or say, but it's weird that we've not had a World War III. Not that I am praying for one. I love peace. But knowing how humanity likes division more than unity, it's just weird. So maybe we owe these people our lives. The Master keeps talking about how they have to intervene because mankind has learned to tamper with certain powers. Our emissaries have already delivered messages to the powers of your world, and yet they do not heed. Your race has now reached the point of no return, for there are those among you who would destroy your very world rather than relinquish their power as they know it. The dark ages that will come now for your race will cover the earth like a pall, but I believe that some of your race will live through the storm. Beyond that, I cannot say. We see at a great distance a new world stirring from the ruins of your race, seeking its lost and legendary treasures, and they will be here, my son, safe in our keeping. When that time arrives, we shall come forward again to help revive your culture and your race. Perhaps by then you will have learned the futility of war and its strife. And after that time, certain of your culture and science will be returned for your race to begin anew. You, my son, are to return to the surface world with this message. After Bird was given the full message, he was escorted out of the room and soon arrived back at their aircraft and were escorted out of the Crystal City. As soon as they left the city, a radio message came through. "We are leaving you now, Admiral. Your controls are free. Auf Wiedersehen." And that was it. Bird was confused about what just happened. Finally, his radio was working, and the Navy could reach him. On March 11th, 1947, after the expedition was cut short, Bird attended a staff meeting at the Pentagon where he was debriefed, and he let everyone present know what he saw and the message he got. After this debriefing, Admiral Byrd was detained for several hours, 6 hours, 39 minutes to be exact. He was interviewed intently by top security forces and a medical team. He was placed under strict control and was ordered to remain silent about everything he saw or heard at the Crystal City. He was reminded that after all, he was a military man and must obey orders. Their plan worked because Byrd hardly gave an interview after Operation High Jump. He was always watchful of what he was saying. But Byrd writing it down in his diary and it being released after his death was him having the last laugh. When Byrd left the expedition and returned back to Chile, because that was where the Navy retreated to first, before moving back home, he was interviewed by a Chilean journalist, and in that interview, he talked about how the US will be faced by an enemy that can fly pole to pole. It sounded weird, and people were wondering what he meant. But after his diary was released to the public, people couldn't help but wonder if he meant the civilization he met at the South Pole. It didn't also help matters that the Secretary of Defense James Forrestal committed quote-unquote suicide. According to official reports, Forrestal allegedly jumped out of the window of the psychiatric ward in Maryland, and that was shortly after Operation High Jump. Before his death, he was an advocate that aliens existed, and he wanted to inform the US public about this issue. Only to be tagged mad, admitted into a mental hospital, and later allegedly jumped to his death. The one man who knew something about Operation High Jump and was going to talk about it was now dead. Case closed. As usual, there are critics who make solid points about people making up stories. I sometimes find myself as a critic when reviewing stories like this. Like, for example, stories of equipment malfunctioning were believed to be works of aliens, but it turns out that the extreme cold caused a lot of systems to malfunction. This is why Operation High Jump was formed in the first place. Also, when he talked about the United States being attacked pole to pole in his interview, he was talking about attacks from Germans coming from the South Pole to the North Pole, not necessarily about aliens. Journalists have a talent of making the simple sound extravagant to capture people and sell more papers. But the most important criticism of all was that the diary didn't exist. Yep, it was never written by Byrd. It was all a lie. Just like how it was debunked that Byrd was the first man to ever reach the North Pole, a title he kept for a long time even after his death, until someone was curious enough to question its possibility, and after a while, was found that he wasn't the first to reach the North Pole. However, one thing that worries me is how almost every country in the world who fights one another over little issues decides to come together and live in peace and harmony when it comes to Antarctica. This is known as the Antarctica Treaty, which was signed in the 1960s and sets the rules for Antarctica. I don't know if you know anything about that continent, but it is shrouded in weird political secrecy. You cannot visit Antarctica unless you are a scientist or are given a pass. The continent is pretty much off limits. Yes, there are a few companies that run pricey cruises, but the people who run these businesses have to be connected to intelligence agencies, which means whatever they are showing you is already watered down knowledge. It's odd to me that the Antarctica Treaty has worked so well. The treaty was said to protect those resources and the environment. All of that is fine, but it's strange that a person from anywhere in the world cannot go to Antarctica. Also, we should remember that over the past few decades, there have been strange accounts, even witnesses of UFOs flying out of the ocean in that part of the world. Inasmuch as Bird's diary is said fake, it still makes us question things. The fact in all stories, be it fake or real, is that he was missing for 3 hours. Where was he in those 3 hours that they couldn't reach him? How was he able to stay in flight for more than 3 hours without refueling? The mysterious death of the Secretary of Defense and the death of Bird's own son makes what should be a close-shut case be a case that is still open for investigation. His son was found in an abandoned warehouse in Baltimore just days before the supposed fake diary was released. And get this, the official report and cause of his death was malnutrition and dehydration. Tell me, how does the son of a prominent Massachusetts family end up dying malnourished? If everything mentioned above are just coincidences, I have to say that's a lot of coincidence. Don't you think?
There you go, guys. There's a little crazy stuff for you. That should do it for today, though, guys. We've been here about 3.5 hours. Two very interesting cold cases, and there's more. I just threw that little last bit in just to give you an idea as to what the deal is in Antarctica and why it's such a big deal. But that's it then, guys. I appreciate you guys joining me today. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I don't know that I'll see you guys here later, but either way, that the secondary cold case is the one that bugs me the most because there's really no answers to it whatsoever. So I hope you guys enjoyed. And I will see you guys very soon. Don't forget to love yourselves and love each other. And I will see you very, very soon. Thanks for joining us today. Bye-bye, y'all.